What is up, everybody? Welcome to another Logical Plausible Probable After Show. We've had a rather interesting, probably when I say interesting, probably the most boring debate I've ever been involved in over on MDD. They kind of went exactly the way I was anticipating it was going to go, and was hoping that it wouldn't, because those types of debates are absolutely pointless and actually reaching any macro level conclusions. They always degenerate into minuscule little hyper-focused tangents on one little tiny stone in the macro mosaic that is our very existence. And with people like Ask Yourself, who I've watched before, had him on after shows before, I've just watched his debates, he approached it exactly the way I expected, and doesn't understand that the rest of the world does not have to operate under his rules. I don't have to comply with everything he says, and then somehow be considered irrational for not bending over to his approach. But anyway, enough from me. James W. and Otangelo have joined so far. People, the after show link to join is in the description. I've also posted it in chat. I'll post it again here in a few minutes. Come on in and join and share your thoughts. Those who do come into the after show, make sure you are first talking about the debate in general, what you thought about it, best points, and who won, who lost. You want to talk trash to me? That's fine. I kind of, about halfway through, I was like, you know what? I was going to let Andrew go down this rabbit hole, because I think he enjoys this kind of stuff more than I do. But go ahead, James W., you're here first, man. So welcome to the after show. And what did you think?
I think it was a dumpster fire. I'd have to say so. I know there was a couple times where I nodded off in the debate, and I didn't really hear them making very many good points. You know, if you ask me why I don't believe Christianity is true, I'm going to be able to rattle off several reasons. I didn't really hear a lot of that. I heard mostly whining and complaining, and I didn't really hear a lot of substance. Very underwhelming.
Awesome. Otangelo, what do you think, man?
I was just wondering, watching you, John, did you sleep, or were you completely disconcentrated during that?
No, I was for a while. People kept talking about I was sleeping. No, I was not sleeping. There was a point where I was like literally setting up the after show, because In His Image was going to do an after show, but then he messaged me and said he wasn't. So I'm like, well, heck, I guess I'll do one. And so I started setting up the after show on my phone while so I was looking down. So everybody thought I was asleep. I was actually setting up this after show, and I even responded to people like, no, I'm not sleeping. I'm literally setting this up. And then right after that, I did a super chat like, hey, there's going to be an after show. And then like, this is a dumpster fire. There's going to be an after show. Everybody's asking if I'm asleep when I'm literally being like, come to the after show. Like, obviously I'm not asleep. Yeah. Which I thought was rather entertaining. But yeah, I mean, the reason I was so irritated and was just refusing to to acquiesce to Ask Yourself is I've watched him do this in every debate. It doesn't matter how far you go down in like satisfying all of his little clarification points. It's like you can keep trying to clarify something into infinity. And if you don't actually allow people to like, okay, here's the top level point that's being made, and then present the evidence to support or confirm or deny, and you never let those positions get forth, like unless you put it forth in a logic statement, you're never going to get anywhere with that. Like, I'm not going to sit here and every sentence that comes out of my mouth from your perspective has to be in a logic statement. When he sat there later on, when he finally came back on after Troy and Andrew been talking for a while, and started asking all these clarification questions, it's like, so you can ask clarification questions and to support and offer evidence to support your position as to why you're demanding this, XYZ. But when we try to do the same, you refuse and claim that we're not actually putting forth any kind of structure. And it's like, don't run around claiming to be an expert in all of these things and act like you have some high ground from a understanding of, morals philosophy and philosophical principles. And then like how he was closing off, like, well, it has to be formally clarified. Like, the kalam has to be clarified, really? Really, at this point, the kalam needs to be clarified. I mean, I just don't know what. Like, don't run around acting like you're Mr. Know-It-All if you need clarification of the kalam. Andrew, what's going on, man? How are you doing? Andrew, we can hear you there.
Not too bad.
Well, I appreciate you coming in, and I'm sorry for making you have to deal with the second half of that mostly by yourself.
Hey, what up, boys?
What's up, man? So, Andrew, you're obviously you were part of the debate. So, go ahead and share your thoughts about what you thought about it.
Sure. It was sort of the classic theistic debate of the non-theists wanting to take the role of prosecutor or Satan prosecuting Job and not having to bring anything forth and just pick apart arguments presented, which I find to be a very typical tactic, but it just shows how philosophically anemic non-theism is in the modern world, that they have to engage in these types of things.
All right, I completely agree. I don't know if you heard before you came on. I don't know if you heard my little diatribe, but in a less restrained manner is what you just said. I'm just like, what is even the point of these types of conversations? I don't mean like, hey, you at a coffee shop having a conversation with somebody like this. But I'm talking about from a formal perspective. Like there's no substance to this whatsoever in terms of like, are we actually going to reach any level of substantive argument? Or like, for example, the point you just made, where they wanted to be the prosecutors, but then pre-show, we're like, oh, well, it's not really a trial. But then they wanted to take that action in from a reality perspective in the actual debate.
Yeah, and fundamentally, this is part of my frustration on modern academic philosophy. Is this type of analysis or deconstruction is very popular, where you're really good at criticizing arguments and breaking things down, but not really good at presenting your own arguments. And you see this type of thing with critical theory as well, which, it's adjacent to it, right? Because philosophers generally don't reject truth because then they'd be out of the job. But the second and third and fourth rate philosophers that are
Andrew, I think you're losing signal. You're fading out there.
I think we're losing it.
Andrew, you're roboting.
Are happy to reject truth. Sorry about that.
Yeah, you roboted there for a second. You were talking about the academics and not really being able. They're criticizing arguments, but not being able to actually put forth their own. It's kind of where you started breaking up there. Oh, Andrew, you're on.
And
this
mute. Seems to.
I think we lost them again.
All right. Well, Andrew, when you come back, and we'll let you go. Evolutionists deny real science. What's up, man? How you doing? Did you watch the debate? Will. Or you? I know it's Will. I was just saying your your screen name. So everybody, Will is a very, very smart 15-year-old. Loves science, loves philosophy, and actually thinking for himself and trying to reach conclusions. Unlike our supposed adult agnostic opponents tonight. Well, Troy was a little better. Ask yourself. Yeah. I honestly think he's less mature than Will. But Will, what'd you think? Share your thoughts, man.
Are you talking about the David Neff, the one you just posted today?
No, I was talking about. I just got done with the debate on modern day debate.
Oh, I didn't watch it. I didn't even know. What was it about? Evolution versus creation?
No, it was. Well, the title was Theism on Trial, but then our opponents didn't actually want it to. They didn't want to be the prosecutors. They wanted just to be the nitpickers. We had this whole controversy in pre-show, and then it turned into a complete dumpster fire on in the actual debate.
Did he point out the spaghetti monster?
No, there was no spaghetti monster. None of that. I was okay. We had a new. I think this is your first time joining the one of the after show streams. What's up, boy? How you doing?
What up, dude? Can you guys hear me?
Yep, coming through. Okay.
Yo, yeah, I just came on because you guys are doing that thing on Monday or whatever. I just wanted to see what this was about. I didn't know I was actually gonna jump in or whatever, but I can definitely talk or jump in the conversation.
Oh yeah. So did you see the debate over on Modern Day Debate?
No, but I do love modern day debate. That's how I got into standing for truth, and that's how I found you.
Gotcha. Yeah, we just had a little bit of a dumpster fire over on Modern Day Debate.
How so?
Yeah, stay tuned. You'll hear all about it. But did you have any, while you're here? Do you have any questions about what's going down on Monday?
No questions. I'll be definitely debating. I'm definitely trying to get that $50.
Okay, so you're gonna make a formal argument as to why the genetic code is not a code.
Yeah. Well, it's not going to be. See, the framing of the question kind of leads you to one like thought point, but I'll be definitely saying how, talking about that and how that equates to God is God of the gaps like fallacy. So I'll be explaining that.
No, that's not the topic at hand. The topic is whether or not the genetic code is a literal code, or if it's just metaphor, analogy, etc. And whether or not, from a information theory perspective, it either fulfills or does not fulfill the literal definition of a code.
Well, yeah. I guess that's why I said like the framing of the question kind of makes it so you can't oppose the biblical like point of it or whatever, because you could say it's a code or whatever. You can say whatever you want about like debunking these genetic theorists or whatever. But I mean, the thing for me and like is that like I don't understand how that like equates to like a Christian God or whatever. But I mean, I guess that won't.
It doesn't. Boy, it hasn't anything to do in specific with the Christian God. Do you actually understand what the genetic code is and what it does?
No.
Okay, so you have no point to talk about the topic, right?
Well, I thought the main point of the I guess I'm not going to be able to debate or whatever, because I thought the point of what he was trying to say was that means that correlates to a Christian God or whatever. That means it's a Christian God or whatever.
No,
I thought that's what the topic or the point of the topic was.
No, it doesn't lead to a specific God. What it does is following. It does assign meaning of one language to another. It is, in a literal sense, a cipher. And that cipher had to emerge prebiotically before life started, because life depends on it. And then you have to ask yourself, what could have caused that assigning of meaning of one language to another? And we only know of intelligence being able to make assignment of meaning. We do not know of non-intelligent agencies or mechanisms to be able to do that. And that is basically the crux of the issue. And science is trying to find an answer, a naturalistic answer to that questions for decades now. And very well-known scientists like Kunin, they have written science papers on that topic, and they confess that this is one of the biggest problems in biology.
Interesting. Yeah. That's all very, very interesting. Yeah. I thought when I got into standing for truth and when I found logical, plausible, probable, I thought the main point that they were trying to make is because all that is intelligent or whatever, that must mean that that God is Christian and the biblical the Bible is true and all that stuff or whatever.
I don't actually know of any teleological argument for God's existence besides the Kalam, which in my understanding leads to the God of the Bible, but not specifically to the Christian God. But any of the other teleological arguments, they do not lead to a specific God. They lead to an intelligent designer as a better explanation of what we observe in the natural world than natural mechanisms. Okay.
Nice. Yeah.
It brings us that far. Now the Kalam cosmological argument leads to make logical inferences of the nature that God or creator or intelligent designer must have. And then you can compare these characteristics with the description of the different religions out there. And the only religious book which matches actually with these necessary characteristics is the God of the Bible. So I made a video in regards to
So you guys are
topic.
saying that then?
Yeah, well, I don't say it is the Christian God. I mean, it is the God of the Bible. Let's say like this, okay? Now, in order to come to Christ, there are other arguments.
I see what you're saying, but so isn't that?
Hang on, guys. We'll continue this in a minute. I think Andrew's back and he's got his mic working again. Andrew, welcome back into the stream, man. Continue. Let's pick back up where we left off with you, man. I'm talking about the debate tonight. Well, guys, we'll get back to discussing some other stuff. But while we got Andrew, let's discuss a little bit more about the conversation tonight.
I love Andrew.
Thank you very much. I love you too. So basically, the fundamental issue is we were in a debate where they wanted to have an asymmetry where we presented arguments and they picked it apart. In small doses. And basically what we ended up with the second half is going through the argument from contingency. And the agnostic said, well, I'm skeptical of the principle of sufficient reason. And that is a principle that everything in the world has an explanation that you can search for and find. And the thing is, if you're skeptical of that or think it might be false, then why are you asking for arguments for God's existence, right? Because it might be the case that it's not explainable.
It's the principle of sufficient reason.
Yeah, exactly. And
that's the irony, Andrew, is part of the irony of, especially ask yourselves denial of this, is in both, I think the second, maybe the third paragraph of my opening statement, and I think the fourth from the end, what you were just describing is exactly what the conclusion of, well, it just doesn't convince me. I'm just not convinced. I said that would be there. It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter whether there's principle of sufficient reason. It doesn't matter what evidence you put forth, what logical arguments you present. The agnostics, such as the two that we interacted with, they always end up with, well, I understand, I hear what you're saying, but I'm just not convinced. And it's like, well, okay, well, then why do you even engage in this stuff? If you've been hearing these, like, the arguments have been being developed, fine-tuned, countered, expanded, problems fine-tuned out of them, objections overcome for literally hundreds of years at this point. And if you're just going to dismiss all of them because, and that's why I made the point of, like, you're going to try and nitpick some little myopic component of this one argument rather than consider the plethora of arguments from a big picture perspective as to whether or not the comprehensive level of evidence overcomes your little, hair splitting objection to this one point. And that's why I got kind of so annoyed and refused to really go into this stuff. It's like, what's the point? If you're going to do this, then why do we even have these conversations? You have zero intention of ever actually having real conversation and dialogue about the big picture of our existence. And to me, that just indicates either you're afraid to, or you're smart enough, which those guys are obviously smart. They just want to refuse to do anything other than try and come up with logic games versus whether or not the logic and the plausibility and the probability all coincide in reaching of the rational end conclusion.
Well, they are basically endorsing and doing what the new atheists are doing in a very general sense. They have been beaten from 2000 to 2010, where they have hold a strong atheist position, and then when they've seen that they were unable to defend the claim that most probably there is no God, so they went just simply to claim, oh, we are just skeptic about your position, but we don't know, but we do not hold any position whatsoever, in order just not to have to meet the burden of proof. And that is very common, and it is really boring. And it's precisely what you are saying, John. What is the point if you have no own position? If you do not believe what I believe in regards of God, so provide a better explanation based on materialism. But just don't just say, oh, I don't believe you. So what's the point?
Exactly. And the hilarious thing is Anthony Flew, who in the 1970s came up with this trope of the theist has the burden of proof, actually later in his life, after reading Aristotle and actually studying information theory with the genetic code, became a theist. Even starting from the position... Yeah, a deist.
Yeah, deist, not a theist.
Yeah, a non-personal God, or like an Aristotelian God, right?
Yeah, he didn't come to the Christian God or to the God of the Bible. He didn't go through that.
No, but at least in his last book, he said that from his perspective, Christianity was at least plausible.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what I find so interesting in these kinds of discussions like we had tonight. You know, the point you're making about even people who are like what was his name? Flew, you were just mentioning. He goes from being a instigator of this agnostic / atheist position. Then when he steps outside of the logic games, hypotheticals, and actually went and looked at the real world evidence, like in this context, going and observing what the real world requirements are for life to exist with the genetic code as an example, at least came to the conclusion that, wow, all these hypotheticals that I was dealing with are completely annihilated by the real world evidence. And now, did he come to the same conclusion that we have in relation to the Christian God? Not necessarily, but at a minimum, recognized that his original position did not have substance.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of this is in ancient authors, right? Even ancient pagan authors that are basically ignored in modern education, right? You know, Aristotle was big into logic and against sophistry, and so is Plato. And that's sort of the thing is we end up with philosophically trained sophists who know the arguments and know how to criticize, but aren't aiming at truth, but at criticism.
That's very true. And one of the things I find very interesting about that group that you're referring to is when you, in my experience, and what I've observed both, from personal interactions as well as, just others, is once you get past on the rare occasions when they will stop trying to run around in circles and actually go beyond their talking points, they either have no substance or are forced to recognize that their arguments they are claiming are so substantive really don't bear much substance from a real world perspective. And which is why that's why I kept making the illusion of cowards tonight, of you don't want to go down the rabbit hole in terms of what is the actual evidence. Like, oh, I'm going to make all these hypotheticals that the fine-tuned universe has no actual bearing in terms of the conclusion that a God must exist. Like, I'm just going to dismiss this from a surface level. Well, there might be some other, the many worlds hypothesis may be true. Therefore, the conclusion that there's purpose is false. I mean, there's no evidence for it being, a logical and rational conclusion. And it's like, if that's the way you're going to dance around this, then you're not actually engaging in real thought.
Yeah, and on the other end of the spectrum, they almost never seem to be like Nietzschean or old atheists like Camus or Sartre or these existentialists who really grappled with what it meant for there to be no God, right? And that's sort of the thing that frustrates me with a lot of these modern non-believers is that they're not willing to take the red pill of like Nietzsche and go through the consequences of what is reality like if there isn't a God. And instead they're maximally skeptical when it comes to theology and minimally skeptical when it comes to like obeying whatever their social norms are of their peer group.
Yeah, they use a double standard. They believe easily in evolution, in multiverses, in these kind of claims which have to be literally taken by faith. They are not skeptical at all in regards of these propositions, but when it comes to God, then they are hyper skeptical, and that is a double standard, of course. And Nietzsche, he had a very advanced understanding in regards of the consequences when you are a materialist. And it is fascinating to read where he went with his thoughts. He was philosophically very advanced, and it is worth to read what he had to say. And the new atheists, they really should take a slap in the face compared with Nietzsche in regards of philosophical sophistication.
I have a question real quick. What is the multiverse exactly, if I may ask?
Well, the multi. Do you want to answer that, John, or shall I answer?
Go ahead, Angelo.
Well, the thing is that the universe is finely tuned on several levels. It starts with the Big Bang, with the fundamental forces, with the chemical elements. To get carbon, you require extreme fine tuning. Then the galaxy is finely tuned. The planets, the orbits, the size of the Earth, the moon, the atmosphere. Then even in biochemistry, we have fine tuning of the forces of what's on Crick base pairing. You need the right bases, nucleotide bases, and so forth. So that requires an explanation. And we as theists, we believe that God is the fine tuner which had foreknowledge what was required in order to have a universe which was able to host life. And since this is a brute fact, this is a scientific fact which is undeniable. So we require, of course, an explanation. How is it possible that the universe is precisely right in order to host life? So they say, well, if there is an infinite number of different universes with different laws and different sets, then eventually, by chance, one has become life permitting. So that is basically the answer to the theistic explanation. That's why they invented it, but it is entirely a made-up claim. There is any evidence whatsoever in regards of that claim. So if you apply Occam's razor, you go with the easier and less complex explanation. And of course, God is a less complex explanation. And a multiverse also requires fine-tuning and a generator, a multiverse generator. And then you have simply pushed back the problem further back, and you have still no explanation.
So it's just
what do you think comes before the Big Bang?
God.
Isn't that a God of the gaps fallacy?
Why should it be a God of the gaps fallacy?
Well, because you're not explaining. There's no principle of sufficient reason there. There's no sufficient reason why.
Okay, so let's think about this logically for a second, man. If at the Big Bang there's nothing but quantum foam, and there still needs to be a catalyst for the Big Bang, what if God does not exist? What existed prior to that?
I think that the idea of nothingness before the Big Bang is like something that humans don't quite understand properly right now. And I think logically, like if you put it on a so I vaguely study ontological mathematics, and so it says that you could think of nothingness as like zero, right? So that's like that would be like what is nothingness, and then you could think of an equation 1 + 1 - 1 = 0 or whatever. So you can see that something can equal nothing logically or whatever. So I think that that's something that we.
So are you actually going to try and go down the rabbit hole in terms of the real world application of the positive negative balance? That what's his face? What's his face? I forget the guy's name now. Is it Krauss that spews that dumbassery?
Yeah.
You know that the majority of physicists like look at that, number one, as dumb, but number two, that still does not explain the catalyst requirement in order for
so if you let me finish, I could explain it. So then you could think of 1 plus -1, and then you could see that there.
So you're saying that abstracts can affect reality.
Well, I'm not saying abstracts can affect reality. I'm saying I believe personally that everything is made of mind, and everything is mind or whatever, and everything. Math is pure mind, and I think this world is made up of pure math, and so I believe that the true way to understand things is through absolute truths and through what's called deductive reasoning, and I think you guys would like that or whatever.
So basically, you're really getting down to is that the universe is information.
Yeah.
That there is So in terms of which I have no problem with. So in the context of that, is there at the ultimate root, is prescriptive information the fundamental requirement?
What do you mean by that? I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, is everything descriptive, or are there prescriptive application of information required in order for all this order that we experience to exist?
I'm still not sure what you mean by that question.
So are you dancing around, or do you not know the definition of prescriptive?
No, I don't understand the
so prescriptive information would be something that is instructive, must be followed in a specific steps in order to achieve a predetermined outcome.
So you're saying like kind of like a code that like creates like things,
right? So like right now, what is prescriptive information required in order for us to be having this conversation?
I'm not sure. I don't know how I would answer that.
So are you suggesting that the code that enables the microphone that you're using to speak to me and the TPC data transfer and all of the different aspects of compression, decompression, translation, encode, decode that's occurring in order for us to have this conversation, because we're not next to each other, right? And then the decode, encode process that's happening inside of our brains to be able to understand it. Are you suggesting that that is not prescriptive information in its literal embodiment?
I'm not sure how I would answer that question. No, but what I was really getting at,
could random zeros and ones enable those functions to occur if it was just random and not formally created and prescribed? Could that occur?
Well, I'm not saying that it's random. I'm just saying that these are the ways to look at before the Big Bang as pure math. These are the ways that we're going to understand it. We're not going to understand it as like, if you say God, is the answer to before the Big Bang. Well, that's like a fallacious, like that's what's
because you have to have prescriptive laws of.
It has to hold up to the principle of sufficient reason, and that
that's where I'm going with it.
That explanation doesn't hold up to the principle
if prescriptive laws which govern the universe and make all of the stuff that we're now experiencing possible must be in place prior to the rest of it following. Then you either have to conclude.
John, I know what he tries to say. He's quoting Krauss, which makes the claim that at the beginning there were positive and negative energy, and that it cancels it out, and in the end you have a zero value, which is basically nothing, and from that,
Yeah,
then
I
things
already
are-
addressed. I already acknowledged.
yeah.
that that was
Nothing
the-
equals
So-
something, and that
so-
created what we know as like singularity
Okay.
right now, and that's kind of what created
Okay.
the Big Bang event.
Okay, so let me read here this. The attempt to draw metaphysical implications from the zero-net energy hypothesis is a bad joke. It's like saying that if your debts and your assets exactly cancel each other out so that your net worth is zero, then there is no cause of your current financial condition. The suggestion that nothing exists is absurd. Not only do I undeniably exist, but according to the hypothesis, the positive and negative energy exists. So, as Christopher Isham, Britain's premier quantum cosmologist, point out, there still needs to be ontic seeding to create the positive and negative energy in the first place. So, if you have a $100 bill and you have a debt of $100, that state of affairs has to be caused into existence. And that's the same as well with the zero net energy at the beginning of the universe. Something had to bring that state of affairs into existing. And so you have not canceled out the cause. You need to explain.
Wait,
where
that doesn't make sense though, because you don't have
from.
to have a cause for zero or whatever. You don't have to have a cause for nothing. Nothing.
So you have not understood what I
equals-
said.
No,
So you have not understood what I said. If you
Okay,
have,
could you read?
okay. If you go to a bank and you deposit there $100, and you go to another bank and there you make a debt loan of $100, so you have zero assets because they cancel out, correct?
Yeah.
And that's but in order to cancel them out, you need to create that state of affairs. You have first to put $100 in the bank and then make a loan of $100 at the other bank, and then both they cancel them out. You have zero assets and zero net worth, but in order to have that state of affairs, you have to create it. And that's exactly the same situation at the beginning of the Big Bang. If there were theoretically virtual particles which cancel out each other, and then you have a zero net energy, that state of affairs requires a quantum vacuum. And then you have to ask who or what or how did that quantum vacuum come to be? How did it come into existence? So you still need a cause for that situation.
That doesn't even make sense, because you're saying that example that you're even making is you're talking about a physical thing.
Hang on, hey boy. So the in the virtual particles, where do they come from?
They're eternal. They've always been there. Is recognized
that the virtual particles are somehow grabbing energy from somewhere else. They're borrowing it temporarily and then returning it. Like, this is well accepted in quantum physics.
And they are in time.
I mean, this appeal to authority doesn't do anything for me.
So you just said,
saying that other people have realized.
Okay, so you're relying on Lawrence Krauss's positive negative cancel out, which is an appeal to authority. But when it's recognized that virtual
I didn't
particles,
appeal to him. I just explained that you appealed to authority.
No, that's his position. That he's the one that came up with that.
But I just explained it. Just he made it up to mean I'm appealing to him.
Then you just made the assertion that they're eternal.
Yeah.
And I am countering with, it is recognized in science that the virtual particles are not just popping out of nothing. They are temporarily borrowing energy from elsewhere.
Out of nothing. I'm right there with you. That's not what I'm saying. Okay. They're eternal. Okay, they're not popping out of nothing.
Okay,
which means that. Okay, so you're not following. You're not following that this ultimately cancels out your sum zero argument, right?
But it doesn't, though.
Okay, boy. Let me ask you. The virtual particles, are they in time? Does it require time for them to pop out and so forth, or not?
No, they're eternal, right? So
No,
no,
that's not what I asked. I asked, is it required that they are in time? Is the pop-up of these virtual particles?
No, time is a manifestation of the singularity coming out of phase. It's like a mirror that was like shattered or something and broken into a million pieces or whatever. That's what created the world we see today.
That's
so amazing a search. Hey, Tangela, I think Andrew, he keeps coming off of mute. I think he's got something he wants to say. Andrew, did you have something you want to interject?
Sure, yeah. And this is sort of abstract, but it's really interesting to me that instead of like disputing the Kalam argument, a lot of atheists end up rejecting the Big Bang. And the Kalam argument is actually one of the more recent cosmological arguments, which fits well with our biblical understanding of creation, but oftentimes doesn't match sort of the pagan mind understanding of the world, and that's actually why I tend to like the 5 ways that like Aquinas has, where it will actually doesn't even say anything about the age of the universe, right? That even if the universe was hypothetically eternal, there would still need to be God to keep it in existence. And
Interesting.
The analogy is, let's assume that the universe is like a train, right? And Christians believe that eventually there's a caboose, right? But even if it was eternal and we go all the way back in time, just having an infinitely long train doesn't get everything started. You need an engine to get it moving. And the analogy is that God is the thing that causes this to occur. And an infinite or eternal universe itself doesn't actually offer an explanation for why things are going on in it.
So yeah, I just tried to do that though, but you guys aren't understanding. The cause for the world is nothingness equaling something. It's just the out of phaseness that waves, that's the way they behave. It just goes out of phase. So that's what created and manifested this world. That's the explanation for it or whatever. We don't believe, we're not going to just say, oh, God did that or whatever, because that's not descriptive. That's not an explanation. That's quite literally a God of the gaps fallacy. So that's why I don't prescribe to it or whatever, because it's a fallacy. It just doesn't, it's not an explanation. And definitely doesn't hold up to the principle of sufficient reason too.
So do you think that arbitrarily assigned value is a
I believe math is like mind, and I believe math is everything, so it's not arbitrary to me.
So the vibration that's required in order for me to execute the English language and the ability for you to interpret it, are you suggesting that there is not a intelligent agency requirement in order to both assign the value to the vibration and the ability to decode it?
Well, again, I when it comes to like material studies and stuff like that.
Okay,
like,
so you're a dance around the dude. Let's get into real world. I don't want to hear a bunch of hypothetical dance around the bush.
Well, I'm willing to answer your question.
No, answer direct questions, not with a bunch of flowery dance around.
Well, you didn't let me finish.
Direct question. Do a direct answer, boy.
Okay. Well, could you reiterate the question so I can maybe answer it in a more direct way?
Is intelligent agency required?
Yeah. So when it comes to
assign value, is intelligent agency required to assign semantic meaning to a formal syntax in order to derive a information conclusion?
Yeah. I agree with you guys on a lot of the material studies that you guys have been doing, and I totally appreciate those things. But when it comes to explaining the metaphysics of it, you guys always run into a God of the gaps fallacy, and that's why I can't hop on board with you guys. It always ends up being, oh, okay, God is the cause of this, which is a fallacy. So
okay, boy, can I read you something here? It is claimed that virtual particles are indeed real particles. Quantum theory predicts that every particle spends some time.
Hey, hold
as
on, I
a
got the door here.
combination- Sorry?
He
I
got
got someone at my door.
Yeah.
John, as soon as there is time required for virtual particles to pop up and out in the system, in the quantum vacuum, they cannot exist eternally. They must have a beginning.
Well, of
But-
course they do. I mean,
Right.
this stuff this is why I'm getting so irritated with the ask yourself types, all those different folks. They come in here and have these conversations. It's like, you know what? You're a minuscule fraction of the actual population of humanity, and you live in a outlier world where you think that
Oh, shit.
actual like logical analysis is capable or is possible for an intelligent agent such as us to reach rational conclusions that are not just God of the gaps hypotheticals. And
Hey guys,
it's just,
I gotta head out here, but it was very cool talking to you guys. Is there any way that we can maybe set up like another talk or maybe a debate? I would love to debate, or I'd love to go into my beliefs further and answer
Yeah, we
any
can-
questions that you guys may.
oh yeah, we can always have more conversation.
Dope. Yeah. I'll pop back into the channel very soon, and I'll see. I can't join the Monday thing because I agree with you on that. But I'll definitely pop in and see what's good, and just hang out.
Sounds good, man. Appreciate it. You're always
Cool,
welcome.
man. Have a great
All right.
one.
You too, man.
All right.
Sunflower, what's up, bro? Welcome to the dumpster fire debate after show, man. Did you witness any of the madness on MDD, or are you popping in late?
I saw the whole debate on MDD.
Okay,
I
John,
was
I'm
gonna.
leaving too. Thank you very much to having me at your stream, and see you next time.
All right.
Awesome.
God
Thanks
bless.
for attending.
guys.
Have a good night, man.
Bye bye.
I saw the whole thing. Pretty much what I expected, as you detailed. Ask yourself loves to revert to, rigid logic. But all I came in here to, the main thing I came in here to say was I was going to ask the guy who just left. I have a pressing point that I brought up before, but I think bears repeating. Invoking God as some sort of explanation for something from nothing is not God of the gaps. God of the gaps is a very specific argument, as in, like, if you look at explanations for God throughout time, and you say, well, there was a good harvest this year, and it was because God blessed us, or if you say that there have been certain things throughout history that people have invoked God as the explanation for that have been fundamentally invalid. The something from nothing, the kalam, the how did matter exist, and the questions that arise that have been discussed, that is a categorically different kind of question than the times throughout history when people have said, like, oh, we got rain this season, that was God. Yeah, okay, you could make a good argument for why that's God of the gaps, but to say that any invocation of God is necessarily God of the gaps, it always just frustrates me so much, because there's even things that still we don't understand, like turbulence. You don't see Christians saying
We don't actually know how lightning actually works.
right, and yet why? You know what? Christians don't fixate and say, turbulence, lightning, that's God. No, it seems like we've deliberately sort of addressed the pressing questions, the pressing paradoxes, and even though there are still unanswered questions in math, science, nature. So it just frustrates me when people assume that any invocation of God is necessarily God of the gaps. It is not true at all. There are categorically different kinds of questions. Sometimes and God gets invoked in some of them rightfully and wrongfully. So that's all I really wanted to add there. Yeah.
No, it's a very good point, and I think in the context of like your point of how does matter exist and of Klom in general and different components, I think that logic extrapolates out the into the abstracts too. Like, wait a minute, there's abstracts that are required for the universe to exist. Like, to me, when you really think about that, it's okay, well, either they have to be completely random or they have to be prescribed. Like, there's no way around this. And to me, the dancing that's done in relation to a lot of things that you were mentioning, Sunflower, the dancing around that's done now in the modern era of like the things that we know, it's like, are you claiming that we're too dumb to be able to reach this conclusion? Because I'm pretty sure it's no longer is there evidence? It's whether or not we are smart enough or not smart enough to be able to make the correct deduction. And it's ironic that Boy was talking about deductive logic, and it's like, yeah, that's the entire point being made. It's like we're using deduction, induction, and abduction to reach the conclusion that the external agent, which you can call the intelligent agency, God, creator, whatever you want, all of the above, is required for all of these other things to be plausible. And that's not a God of the gaps invention, given the fact what we know now and what we are able to do in the context of overcoming what is the quote unquote natural outcome and being able to, reverse entropy. But you came off mute, man. Do you have something you want to add?
Oh, I was gonna just say that's exactly right. I mean, it becomes frustrating because as someone who struggled with some of the, at least growing up, having heard, and when you grow up, you learn about history and you learn about how the notion of God, just generic God, you learn that it was maybe invoked fallaciously to justify certain phenomena or concepts in human history, and that primes you for a sort of a sort of disposition to think that God is just what people say, like God is just this thing people made up to explain what they can't, what they don't understand, can't justify. And this is, it takes a little bit of maturity and nuance, admittedly, but once you actually have all of the kind of variables and the concept and the equations and things in play, it's so I don't claim to know what these people are thinking, but I just see it as like the same sort of adolescent refutation that like someone would have said, to a hypothetical straw man like theist who was saying like, oh yeah, we had a good growth this season in the garden and it was God, and if you even question it, then don't you dare, little Sonny. It's like they're still in that mode of like rejecting this hypothetical God of the gaps figure, that they're not actually able to look at the origins of matter and the paradoxes and the most reasonable explanation of how that happened, because they're sort of stuck in this like, no, I've been fooled once. Like, I know that like, I know what these tricky theists do. And like, to be fair, there are some people across the world that do invoke God fallaciously, but if they would just for a moment kind of like abandon their ego and just try to like think about like, how is the argument being framed now in this context, I really think they would at the very least be humbled in terms of how compelling it is, whether or not they end up convinced. So yeah, I'll leave it at that. Yeah.
No, I would agree with everything you were saying there. And Will, did you have something you wanted to add or a question you had?
Yeah, this guy was pointing out the Big Bang, right? But isn't like everything that's material cannot be eternal? Does it just decrease over time?
Well, I mean, the foundations can be neither created nor destroyed in the context we're in now. And that's why the entire premise of the Kalam and the significance of the Big Bang in general is that we observe that in the current state of observation that we're looking at, it can change form, but it can't be destroyed or new can't be created. But everything about the Big Bang appears that it did come from nothing. And
Which is really stupid.
And that's the whole conundrum that is faced by the atheist and all the people, well, not just atheists, but people who want to like act there was no external agency requirement, is like, so literally everything that we observe says that it can't happen. Right?
Yeah.
But we're seeing evidence, direct evidence, accepted evidence that it did happen. Therefore, you have to account for something that is not subject to the inability to inside of the universe. We can neither create nor destroy. Like, we can change its form. We cannot like make it literally leave existence. But something outside of it could, right? It's just like in the context of this is where like the virtual aspect becomes more interesting for me, like the digital aspect of like, we can create a universe inside of a computer, right? In a computer game, for example.
Mm-hmm.
We can create that, right? But it can never actually influence us.
Yeah.
I'm talking on the physical level, right? Now hypothetically, if we could, it develops AI, now it can hack a robot and kill. That's a different story. But I'm talking about in the direct context of the character inside of the game on your computer is going to not actually be able to understand what is going on outside of the computer, and B, is not going to be able to directly impact the physical world, and C, even if we give it the AI ability to create new things inside of the computer game, it is not going to be able to create a new computer external to the one it's in. And this is the conundrum, and this is why they'll extrapolate out to we're inside of a simulation, because the logic I'm outlining is like, okay, well, all right, so we're inside of a computer. It makes sense because they follow the exact same extrapolation that I just outlined, right? Okay, well, we're in a computer. Well, even if you go in that, go down the infinite regress, you have to come to something that is not also inside of another computer.
Which, yeah, like I always point out that, they always ask where does God come from, but you must have an uncaused cause, you know what I mean? Something that's not caused by other thing, because otherwise it's just a circular argument. Where did that come from?
But here's the thing that often gets glossed over is, even if God was created by something else, it doesn't change the evidence that suggests that our universe was created. So to me, it kind of cracks me up. It's like, wait a minute, you're trying to jump to you're trying to debunk and disprove the observable evidence that a external cause is required for us, because you don't know what the cause would have been for that agency.
Right.
But that has zero bearing as to whether or not one was required for us. Just like in the context of the computer game analogy of, just because the character in the game doesn't know who my parents were, doesn't mean I didn't write the code that created the game.
Exactly.
And it also doesn't mean that the coder was not required to create the game that I now exist in. It's assuming like the character in the game, gains self-awareness, right? It would be like the two characters in the video game, Mario and Luigi gain sentience, and they're arguing that there is nobody that external that created the freaking Nintendo game, right? Like, no, we can't prove that. We don't know who they were, and we don't know who their parents were. Therefore, whoever wrote the original version of this must be an unintelligent agent. Like, it's all undirected process that created Mario World. I mean, you'd be in that context, you'd be like, what? You're an idiot. Like, you actually think that's that's a rational conclusion? No, you're a moron. Like, of course somebody created the original Mario, right? And the hardware for the first Nintendo. But in the context of our existence, they claim that all of that does not apply. Sunflower, you got something you want to add?
Yeah, and I've said this before, but I kind of have to say it again. This is why I'm always. It's kind of like. So two things. Your debate partner brought this up before. I forget how to say his name. Strategist. What is it again?
Oh, Andrew. I can't pronounce the name. Andrew.
All right, Andrew. And anyway, Andrew. It's like, so for human agents who are obviously selectively skeptical, let's say, namely your two opponents tonight, it's curious, right? It's like, well, what their argument comes down to is something along the lines of, yeah, we can't be sure of anything. But then, nonetheless, they paradoxically have shown up to debate this one specific issue, and they've not shown to challenge or take an agnostic position on all the tons of things they engage with in their waking life. And this is actually, they might try to laugh this off or hand wave it, but it's actually a massive problem for them, because the implication is that they are, as you guys kind of detailed, whatever their system, or whether it's logic or whatever it is, for finding truth, they're acting on it in a near infinite amount of ways just to live. And then they're selectively saying, but in this context, I'm going to be skeptical. You'd have to add, the pressing question is, why are you skeptical? Like, why are you, if you're a living agent, you're fallible. And if you're just a beacon of skeptical purity, then why is that not exhibited in everything in your life?
To expand on your point, like, either you are, and I've mentioned this multiple times, either you are smart enough to reach a conclusion, or you're not. And if you're not, then why are you even engaged in this conversation? Like,
right.
I mean, if it's all going to boil down to, well, I can't know. Well, then are you an idiot? Like, are you not capable of understanding and reaching a conclusion?
Because this is the irony of it.
Quick caveat to that is, I'm not suggesting that the conclusion you reach has to be the one that you hold in infinity. You can change it at some point, but come to a conclusion.
Right. Exactly.
Continue.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's the emperor has no clothes, in my opinion, because it's the atheist has no clothes, right? Or the agnostic. It's like, the level of skepticism that they're applying to the question of God is so disproportionate to the level of skepticism that they apply to everything, that they're comfortable making truth claims on in their waking life, right? It just by anything, like, right? It's like waking up, having interpersonal relationships, having trust in the way their car works. So the question is, why are they going into a corner of the internet to make an agnostic position on something if underpinned by that agnosticism is a general agnosticism that could be leveraged to every single thing they interact with ever? So it's like, you have to sort of ask them, well, if it's emotional, if it's personal, then it's not stemming from whatever mechanism you're invoking to determine it as true or false. And if it's not that, then you've invalidated it by being an emotional personal agent, unless they claim to be some kind of like weird esoteric like AI source, which honestly, ask yourself, might be at this point, because he's so detached from what I consider like a human personality that, like, he might be like Cortana from Halo or something at this point, because he's just so weird that I don't even know if he has like an emotional, empathetic underpinning to his soul. But that's a whole different discussion. Anyway, I think I've pretty much said everything I wanted to say. Yeah.
Well, and what where you were going with all that too is, like, when I called them out on the points you were making, then it was, we're just not smart enough to continue down this rabbit hole. Like, no, I'm calling you out for being an idiot, and for being a dance artist, and for not having the proverbial C.O. Jones to actually address things on the substantive level, not just your ethereal hypotheticals. And this is why I named my channel Logical, Plausible, Probable. It was on full display tonight that, ask yourself specifically, only wants to play in the prop logic world. That's it. He does not want to apply the probability and plausibility component to whether or not the prop logic that's being presented is realistic or not, and reasonable and rational.
So weird.
And I'm like that, and that's why I kept insisting, like, dude, we're not going to. No, we need to expand on the substance of what the point is. Like, why is this a valid argument from a plausibility and a probability perspective? Not can you come up with some random hypothetical, an additional line item in the prop logic game that does not require plausibility and probability, which somehow negates the foundation of the restrictive logical argument. I mean, it's so annoying, and it's like, it's pointless. It's absolutely pointless to go into those kinds of discussions, other than for, like, oh, cool, let's go on and do a bunch of mental gymnastics and not have any probability of coming to any sort of actual conclusion from a substantive level regarding existence. And which is why also kind of why I kept questioning how old he is. Ask yourself, like, dude, are you 12?
Well,
I mean, I know you're an adult, but he really strikes me as a very immature college kid.
Well, I mean, look, I'll go on the record here, Sunflower. Well, look, I don't know. Ask yourself personally, but I have reason to believe that he's sufficiently detached from adult life. I'll put it that way. I have reason to believe that he's sufficiently detached from adult life, in to such an extreme extent that it actually makes sense that he would have this level of a detached approach. Because it's like, to me, so many things become clear, and this is very like, armchair layman, whatever. But like, to me, so many things become clear just when you live in the real world, and I mean that kind of like in an abstract but actually serious sense. And what I get from Ask Yourself is that he's so detached. He's so like removed from interpersonal life that this is kind of all he knows. I don't even know that he can invoke his intuition on a level beyond this kind of propositional logic, because I feel, again, this is all Sunflower going on the record here. I just don't know that he has a real personal life. I don't know that he has a life where, like, he's a sort of like, he's cornered himself into this borderline, robotic level of existence where that's all he knows. That's his only sense of identity is propositional logic. And that's, to me, that's scary and weird and sad, but I don't know. I hope he can find something more someday.
Hey, real quick, thank you for everything. I'm going to be hopping off, but have a nice one. God bless you all.
Thanks, Will. Appreciate you, man. You have a great night. Appreciate you coming on as always.
All right. Peace out.
Thank you, man. Yeah, it's I would agree with the point you're just making there, Sunflower. It's either he kind of strikes me as a trust fund baby. It's kind of one of the things I get from him. But
certainly
I could be wrong.
I mean, it's even beyond that, because some trust fund baby, like, I don't think he even interacts with people. It's like I get a strong narcissistic vibe. I get a strong kind of like.
Well, he definitely has the attitude that he is intellectually superior to everybody.
Right, and that's been demonstrated by, like, I don't know if you're familiar. He's known for, like, and listen, maybe he's been able to prove people wrong logically, but I've never noticed in anyone else, but in him, he will vocally say, like, I would like to request that you concede this point. And if someone is like, that's kind of weird, like, let's just move on. He's like, no, I need you to vocally concede to me on that point right now before we can move on. That's
no, you're 100% correct. I actually listened to several of his debates before tonight, and I noticed that exact thing. And
that's like an obsessive, like, antisocial. Yeah.
Well, and like I said, that's why in my opening statement I was calling out this stuff. I'm like, I know exactly which path this is going to go because I listened to like 5 of his debates. Like, I know exactly where we're going to go with this.
Yeah,
We're going
and
to end up in a stupid prop logic level of BS, and no substance will actually be done. We'll be an outlier hypotheticals all day, not real world application of the premise of the concept and the premise. And there's going to be no point to this. And
right.
I mean, from the beginning, it's like the name of the debate was Theism on Trial. It's been that for over a month. And then tonight we all show up and it's like, oh, well, no, we're agnostics and we're not actually taking the we're not putting like well, hang on, what? You didn't like object to the name of the freaking debate that you were assigned to well before I ever accepted?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? And now you're gonna back out of it and act like we have to make all this case and all this kind of stuff. No, theism, we're the defendants. Literally, if theism is the one on trial, then we are the defendant.
Right.
You are the prosecutor or the plaintiff. Like, there is no way around this per the literal title. So if you didn't think about this, either you're dumb or you are, you knew full well that you were leading up to try and, dance around. I mean,
and that's what he did with, have you seen his debate with T-Jump on Modern Day Debate?
That was the worst. That was one of the worst debates I've ever seen.
But he did the exact same thing, right? Is that he sort of like, in a way that I've never known a human to act ever. It's like they look at their opponent as someone who is attempting to make an argument, but they dismiss that and they just sort of try to hone in on some kind of, like with T-Jump, he said like, well, wait, you were arguing that you making the mouth sound of the word moral is what proves this. And T-Jump was like, well, obviously I thought any reasonable person would think that like I was defining it this way, and Astroph's like, no, wait, the premise says the mouth sound proves it. It's like, I don't even know what to make of that of him at this point, because it's like he's so removed from reality that how do we save him? How do we save Ask Yourself? Because we have to. I really do want to save him, but I don't know if it's possible.
That's funny. All right, so let's see, Alex and Jungle's joining. Jason, what's up?
Man, let Alex go and talk if he wants.
No, Jason, you were here first, man. You got welcome.
Yeah, no. All I wanted to say quickly was that Jay in the comments section redefine living is having a argument with him or a debate, and Jay and redefine said, well, if you set a painting on the wall and blah blah blah, then whatever he said, I can't remember, but the other guy said, well. And then he asked him a question, and then the other guy said, well, yeah, given enough time, that in nature, that nature could form that painting. I couldn't believe he actually said that. That just
I saw those chats. I mean, if it's a literal okay, if canvas exists, if there's a canvas and a paintbrush and the paint, it's like the way that extrapolates out to, and it's so dumb, is. That's why I put it. With an infinite amount of time and an infinite number of universes, is it logical, plausible, and probable that even if you had the paint, the canvas, and the paintbrush, if there is no intelligent agent, could the Mona Lisa paint itself? And it's like, if your conclusion is that is logical, plausible, and probable, then I'm sorry, but you are not logical at all.
And then he brought up about the monkey and the typewriter experiment, and Matt was talking about that today on the Framing the World.
But
I couldn't believe it. I can't believe it. They got nothing out of that experiment, and then they started throwing arguments at each other, like, "Oh, you used the wrong type of primates. You could have used these ones and that." And they just
he
doesn't even know about it anyway. I'll just shut up now. It's fine.
We expanded the.
So I mean, I'm fine. That's all I wanted to say.
I appreciate it, Jay. Now, if we expand the brains of the chimpanzees, then maybe they can type up randomly the works of William Shakespeare. Okay, Alex, you were next in joining the stream, man. What's your did you see the debate? If so, what were your thoughts? If not, what brings you into the stream, and what did you like to talk about?
Yeah, I watched the debate. I just saw it. I think it's difficult sometimes with Ask Yourself. I do agree with a lot of what he says, but it is difficult to have a conversation with him, so I can see your frustration, because he wants to do everything very technical, almost like an algebra equation, and rather than have a conversation. So if you're not up to speed on that, he'll think he's better than you because he can say all this technical stuff and you can't. No, not necessarily that you can't, but do you know what I mean?
Well, no. I totally understand what you're saying. I mean, that's why in my opening statement, I literally predicted that's the route he was going to go down, and I was going to refuse to comply with. It's like, this is a debate. I'm not in your court. Like, you are not the king, and I don't have to bow down to your whims. Like, we can have dialogue as adults, and I don't have to we don't have to all just bend over and kiss the ring of ask yourself. I mean,
I think the thing with ask yourself though is what he wants to get across is like he wants a clear argument for it, because I think he genuinely doesn't know either way. So he wants, what is your good reason for there to be a God?
No, see, with him, what you just said is a hypothetical. I would agree with you hypothetically. However, I would say from observation of how he actually acts, he has zero intent of doing anything other than coming up with some other theoretical, hypothetical explanation. And if he can come up with one, it doesn't matter if it's plausible or probable. If he can come up with one, then no matter how good your argument is, he is going to dismiss it in relation to.
Can you give an example of that then?
They believe in the visible laws, but not the invisible lawgiver.
Wait, Alex, he does that with everything. What? Ask yourself is the ultimate you can't prove that's true artist. I mean, like, he literally he stakes his identity on when he argues with people. Isn't
that kind of the point of the debate, is to prove
because ask
or
yourself,
at least say that it's more reasonable than not believing it.
No, because that results in saying it's more reasonable to not believe in anything, and yet ask yourself is a human being with distinct beliefs in the world. So it's clearly a desperate attempt that he's targeting something from some reason of his ego or emotional whatever. And that's what he's unwilling to admit, right? Is that he's not objectively skeptical. He is selectively skeptical, and it reveals a lot about him when he goes after certain things.
What is he not skeptical about?
How about the fact that there's no reason that one should there's no reason that how solipsism, like, he argues for veganism a lot. I assume he thinks he exists. Do you think that ask yourself is look at his content? He tilts towards veganism and atheism more than other stuff. Do you think that's not true?
Well, he labels himself an agnostic, so I wouldn't. It depends what you're going by definition of atheist.
He definitely tilts towards veganism more than anything else.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Well, okay. So
I think he thinks that there's no good reason to harm animals.
Does he choose to engage with certain topics more than others, or is he just a sort of like an agent of objective?
Yeah, sure. I'm sure he has things that he's more interested in than other things.
Yeah, and that invalidates his entire identity, though. That's the problem.
Why?
Because he has to understand that he's operating emotionally, and therefore anything he does is selected emotionally.
It depends what you're saying there, because like.
Okay, I guess hang on. Time out. We can come back to this, but we get to it. Let's come back. You guys, both of you, just time out 1 second. Jungle Jargon, you were next up, man. How are you doing? Welcome to the after show.
What's up, everybody? What was the show? I mean, what was the subject?
So the debate subject was theism on trial, but it turned into a complete dumpster fire, and basically nothing productive happened. Basically, now we're discussing one of the. It was a tag team debate, and we're discussing specifically Troy was much more reasonable than Ask Yourself was. There was a modicum of dialogue that engaged with between him and Andrew, and the rest of it was a dumpster fire between me and Ask Yourself. Basically, what happened.
Oh, okay. So I missed it, I guess.
Yeah. It was over on Modern Day Debate. Real quick, we'll come back to you, Jungle. Phoenix, welcome to the stream. I think this is your first time joining us. Welcome to the after show. Did you see the debate? Did you just join the after show stream? What's going on?
I didn't see the show, but I do have a couple questions. But let me know when that's appropriate.
No, go ahead. Then we'll go back to Alex. Go ahead.
Okay,
then we'll go back to Alex and Sunflower.
Well, the two major arguments for atheism that I find convincing is the argument from divine hiddenness. Why would God hide himself from people who are open to him? And the problem of evil. So I was just wondering if you guys had an answer for that.
Oh man, we all got an answer for those. You take it, John. We live in a fallen, broken world is one, but I'll let John take it from here.
There's not too much honesty there.
Well, I mean, the first one, I'll address the divine hiddenness. The divine hiddenness argument is, in terms of a supposed, substantive defense of atheism, is honestly at this point requires utter suspension of rational thought. The entire point that is being made, I was having to make my opening statement tonight in the debate, and I make on a regular basis in other ones, is that if you open your eyes and actually do rational analysis beyond the talking points of the atheists, you will quickly find that there is massive amounts of gigantic, proverbial flashing billboards with evidence for God, which directly contradicts this. Well, God, why didn't God make himself, obvious to us? And it's like, man, we're having conversation right now. Just the fact that we have the capacity to have conversation is indicative of the existence of a creator. And when you go down the rabbit holes of what's required for that to be possible, and you have to come to the conclusion that a intelligent agent was required to exist before us, and you extrapolate this out into the cosmological arguments and the Kalam and all these different things of, okay, well, God made it rather obvious that he exists. But then the atheist says, God hides himself from me. Why does God hide? It's like, God's not hiding. God is obvious. You're the one that's refusing to accept that it's obvious.
God did walk with man in the garden, but when man fell and sinned, and he warned man before that, and he cursed the ground and the earth and brought forth thistles and made man toil in the soil and stuff, that's when he withdrew from walking with man on earth and speaking with man. And we live in a fallen, broken world, and we are going down genetically. We've got about 1,500 years left, 1,000 to 1,500 years left before we're extinct with the build-up of mutations. So this all fits in with a fallen, broken world. And in the end, it doesn't matter what horrors you face in this life. It says when you go to heaven, when you go to paradise, that all your tears and pain will be washed away forever and ever and ever. I mean, you think about 1,000 billion trillion years is just a drop in the bucket compared to eternity. So a lousy 50 years, 100 years on this earth is like less than 1,000th of an atom in all the universe. You know what I mean? It's crazy. We're going to be restored. Everything's going to be restored one day. And if you keep your faith through to the end, and nobody can say that God doesn't understand our pain, because God, so he was beaten, starved, humiliated, tortured, and then brutally murdered on the cross and humiliated in front of everybody. And so nobody can say to God, you don't understand our pain, you don't understand our hunger, you don't understand our sadness, you don't understand what it's like to be human, because he came down and he became one of us and tried to show us the way. He did reveal himself to us, and he does reveal himself to us. I've seen the supernatural. My friend died for an hour, officially dead for 30 minutes. He had a massive shot of heroin in a warm bath. He lives here now. He was in bands. He had a massive shot of heroin in a warm bath and sunk beneath the water, and him and his missus were sitting in the bath, and she went unconscious from the heroin shot, and she doesn't know how long he was under the water, but when she dragged him out, he was blue and not breathing. and it took the ambulance about 20 minutes to get there, 15 minutes to get there, 15 minutes because it was King's Cross, New South Wales. And it took the ambulance 10 or 15 minutes to get there. Then they worked on him. So we worked out about half an hour, he was dead. And in that time, he went to a very, very, very dark place. But he said so dark, he said it was like liquid darkness. You could feel the darkness. He said it was so dark that you go into a room where you can't see your hand 1 inch in front of your face. It was 1,000 times more dark than that. So dark that any light would be consumed by the darkness instantly. Because God said he created hell for Satan and his demons. He didn't create it for anybody. He didn't create it for humans. So he created hell. And when God is light, pure light. So when light removes itself from a place, you end up with nothing but outer darkness. So hell wasn't created for humans, but a lot of people make the choice to be separate from God. And every time that they do evil or think about having sex with a woman that they shouldn't be with or commit adultery or whatever, God withdraws from them, and it gives demons jurisdiction in their life. And there's certain rules that God set out at the beginning of the creation, because at the beginning of the creation, he saw all things. He saw every single thing that would happen. That doesn't mean we haven't got free will. It's just that God knows every single word you're ever going to speak till the day you die. He's seen it. God knows exactly how you died. God, I swear they got the idea for Doctor Who from God, because God can go anywhere in time he wants, because he created time. He created the universe. He created matter. And then you got to ask yourself, where did the atom come from? And then they say, well, it came from a subatomic particle, and it come from this, and it come. But where did it come from originally? Where do atoms come from? Where does everything come from? There has to be a beginning to everything. An atom is. So if you're telling me an atom is eternal, then you believe in something that's eternal. So there must be a God who's eternal. If you believe an atom's eternal, or you believe in physical laws, you believe in physics and quantum mechanics. So do we. But you believe in invisible laws, but not an invisible lawgiver. And then they turn around and they say, well, that's because those quantum mechanics laws just describe the way the universe works. Rubbish. They're invisible laws that have effect on forces. So they believe in visible laws and not the invisible lawgiver. And they got no explanation on where a first atom came from, except for a quantum fluctuation popped a magic dot into existence that started expanding 20 billion times the speed of light. It expanded to the size of our solar system every 20 billionth of a second, and in 3 minutes expanded to the size of 100,000 light years. That's their story. So, I mean, you want to believe all this stuff? It's just crazy. Anyway, I'll shut up now.
Can I really quick, just to answer Phoenix's question really quick? It's not to go back to the other thing, but I think John made one of the best analogies ever. It wasn't in tonight's debate, but it was in a debate maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. And he basically said, when you have a child and you see that child maybe learning to ride a bike or skateboard, you don't prevent that child from slipping and falling and getting hurt, because you know that that's part of the development and maturity of the child. And just to quickly reiterate, not to dwell on this, but can you imagine like a bunch of 11-year-old kids convening at like a water cooler, like, oh yeah, our parents didn't let us get the tattoo on our face. Some parents, they are. Yeah, what garbage. But here's the interesting part. When they were 3, 4, 5 years old, they didn't even have the distinction of a parent that could be good or bad. It was kind of blind, right? And this is what I think about Genesis. But it's once they recognized their parents, right? You think about a young kid, 11, 12, 13 years old. Once they recognize their parents as a force that wants good for them, only then can they say, in an act of sort of pride, of course my parents don't want best for me. They wouldn't even let me get a tattoo. And that's a very unique thing, because that's not based in the child actually thinking they feel they know the tattoo is good for them. It's them thinking, I know better than my parents. And this is the kind of attitude that I think is played out in adult atheists, and so that's what I would say to that. Is that you have to have the understanding that there's a guardian that might say things that upset you and feel, how could that be right? But yet you know that they have your best interest in mind. This is the condition of the adult human, in my opinion. And I'll leave that there.
No, well said, Sunflower. And to me, it's part of the reason. What you just said and alluded to, and the thanks for the compliment on the analogy. to me, it's why in a lot of my debates, opening statements, I've started using the words rebellious and juvenile to describe the agnostics and the atheists. It's like, are you so immature that you cannot comprehend what you were just talking about there, Sunflower? And then we have the ability to comprehend relative perspective. And the older you get, the more you have the recognition of the modification to your understanding of the things that we perceived as horrific. So this applies to this also applies to the evil argument, Phoenix, of why would God let this happen? And in terms of evil, like I use myself again as an example of, why does God let us get sick, for example? Well, myself, 7, I'm actually getting close to 8 years now, ago, I almost died of a massive brain hemorrhage. It's a whole very long story, but at the time I was going through all emergency surgery and having a complete paradigm shift in my life, people were always talking about, oh, I can't believe you're going through this. And, they expected me to be angry. And don't get me wrong, there were portions where I was angry and frustrated and sad and all those kind of things of what was happening. But at the ultimate core of it, I recognized that I was being given a second chance at life. And there was more to my existence than what was happening in the here and now in that specific instance. Fast forward to now, when I look back on what I went through then, even though the average person looking at this would say, well, man, how could you ever not want to go back and undo what happened to you? I actually look back on it now, and in spite of the fact that from a purely materialistic perspective, I am nowhere near where I was in terms of the material reward and the material luxuries and all those kind of things that I was enjoying then, from a existence perspective, from an understanding, from a observation of the world, and a internal satisfaction with self, I wouldn't go back and change it at all. And it's
amen.
And what I really recognize that from I don't mean this from an arrogant perspective, just from a maturing perspective, is I look back and realize I never would have gone down the path that I've gone down, and all the things that I've learned and the focus that I've had. I would not be who I am right now if I had not gone through that. And when I look and I can recognize the path that I was on at the time, yeah, I might be rich right now if I hadn't gone down that path, but I would not be happy, and I would have been living an extraordinarily superficial life. And
what about all those people though that live in third world countries that don't get that opportunity? They just had a terrible existence and then died.
Well, they're happy. Have you ever interviewed them? What do you mean?
No.
You realize how that's very weird for you to say, as like you're superimposing your own standard of living on them.
No, I'm just imagining a person that doesn't have a good life.
Well, by what standard?
Right.
Isn't that the beauty of the human condition, is that we can adapt? Listen,
well, would you say it would be a good life to be systematically tortured, abused?
There's a hypothetical person that exists so far beyond your current level of wealth and well-being that's looking down on you the exact same way you're currently looking down on the third world person. Think about that for
all relative perspective.
Yeah, think about that for a second. You're looking down on someone in the third world saying, well, I objectively know they're miserable.
Just third world people.
Here's someone in Rockefeller Tower looking down on you the same way, and you don't want to die. Think about that. Isn't that beautiful that like people can find meaning through God no matter how
I don't want to die because not existing would suck.
Right.
But it's true.
But here's what you're
what Sunflower saying is true.
Well, and Alex, here's the problem, the ultimate root problem with your question is you view the world, and whether it be the person that's dying in a younger state, in the third world country or in a crime-ridden family, whatever it might be, you're viewing existence as this extraordinarily finite moment in the overall eternal cosmos. And that's the whole point that's been being made throughout this conversation, is this little blip of the temporal.
Why do it at all then?
This temporal facet of our existence it's the equivalent of the first 6 months of infancy, right? You don't have any true
Do you remember anything of your first 6 months of infancy?
Oh, for freaking A's sake! Okay, you want to be that myopic? Okay, fine. It's your
No, I'm just saying if it's that
brief
then why
toddler.
do you know?
Hey, no, man. Do you have the intellectual capacity to understand the point being made, or are you going to try and argue myopic little subpoints?
I don't know. What does that mean?
Okay. Do you remember riding your first bicycle?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you crash at any point?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you? You had never experienced a crash on your bicycle before, had you?
No.
Okay. If you cut yourself, you probably cried, right?
Yeah.
Okay. At the moment in time, was it the most tragic thing that had happened to you?
No.
Was it one of the most tragic things that ever happened to you from a first-time experience perspective?
No, not really.
Were you getting butt raped as a child? Like,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
you're full of it, dude. You're missing the point, man. Like, if you
okay, when you had your heart, did you have a girlfriend at some point in your teenage years?
Yeah.
Okay, at some point did you break up?
Yeah, we ended up getting divorced.
Okay, so did you have a heartbreak from losing your first love?
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
So you had never experienced that before, right?
No.
Okay, so that was from your relative perspective, that was the worst thing that ever happened to you in the context of love, correct?
Yeah, sure. I'll grant that. Yeah.
Okay, fine, cool. Now, fast forward to now. Have you fallen in love again?
Yeah.
Okay, so do you want to have different perspective on love, even though at the time it seemed like it was all over, right?
The end of the world.
I don't think love stopped exist. I'm not sure what you mean by your question. Sorry, I don't want to sound pedantic.
You're being extraordinarily pedantic if you.
Yeah, I'm trying not to be.
If you don't comprehend the premise that
Well, I'm
hang on, rewind. Okay, so at the time when you rode your bike as a kid, and you had a crash and you cut yourself. You had never experienced that before, right? That was it might not have been the worst ever, but it was a tragic thing that happened.
It was painful, yeah.
Okay.
I'd rather have not.
Fast forward to adulthood now.
Yeah.
Do you think that falling off your bike was one of the worst things that's ever happened to you?
No. That's because worse things have happened to me.
Right. But at the time as a child, that was one of the worst things that had ever happened to you, correct?
Sure.
Okay. So it's also theoretically possible, right? Do you have any kids?
Yeah, 4.
Okay. So your kids right now, how old are they?
2, 9, 11, and 13.
Okay, so your 2-year-old probably has not yet ridden a bike and run off the road and like scraped up all of her knees and cut her hands, right?
No,
okay, right. She's 2 years old, right? So she has no perspective on that.
I kind of see where you're going with this, but there's a problem.
Well, hang on.
You're not.
Hang on.
You're not.
Hang on. So, as a parent, even though you know that when she gets old enough to ride a bike, she is going to cut herself. She is going to go through a very traumatic time in her little self, in her little stage of existence. Are you still going to let her ride a bike?
Yeah.
Even though you know she's probably going to cut herself?
She might cut herself, yeah.
Okay, if anybody who's ever ridden a bike, I doubt there's a single person on this planet who, when learning to ride a bike and as a child, has not fallen off and cut themselves at least once.
Sure, yeah, okay.
Well, I would actually say you have to cut yourself if you want to be able to ride a bike as an adult. You have to. It would be scary if you didn't at least once.
Yeah, you wouldn't have learned. But my point is, and we're going down this stupidly myopic, pedantic crap, is as the parent, you are still going to, even though she is very, very, very high probability she's going to cut herself and get hurt riding a bike as a child. As a parent, you know there's a very low probability it's going to kill her. Therefore, you're still going to let it happen.
Yeah, but that's not the same analogy that you're making with almost dying of a brain aneurysm, is it? You're saying that that's okay because
now
you didn't die.
Hang on. Okay, so let's extrapolate that out. So now, let's say how is your oldest a boy or a girl?
A girl.
Okay, so let's say fast forward to her being 18. She is now getting involved in drinking, drugs, and hanging out with the bad boys, right?
Yeah.
You are probably going to try and convince her to not do so, right?
Yeah.
Okay, but are you going to like lock her in the basement of your house?
No.
Okay. If she continues to go out and do so, and ends up getting arrested, are you probably going to hire a barrister and try and make her not go to jail for a long period of time?
Well, yeah, I guess it depends what she did. I mean,
well, yeah, but I mean, I'm talking. She's like, she's doing minor drugs and drinking and stuff.
Yeah.
And, okay, right.
Yeah.
Now, let's say another couple more years go by, and she is still doing, even though you've been trying to convince her to stop, and even though you helped her get out of jail, she's fallen back into all of it, and now she overdoses and has partial paralysis due to a heroin overdose. Are you going to leave her on the street, or are you going to bring her back into your house and take care of her?
I'll probably bring her back into the house and try and take care of her. Yeah.
Okay. But you wouldn't disown her, would you?
No, I don't think so. It depends what she's done. I mean, I can't tell.
No, we're talking about she's been doing some drugs and still partying and stuff, but she's not killing people, right?
Sure.
Okay, so a bunch of bad stuff's happened, and as a parent, after you've watched her through high school, started getting involved in stuff, and then she becomes an adult, and then she starts doing drugs, and you help her get out of jail, and you help protect her from all these different things. You're still not going to lock her in the basement, are you?
No.
Okay. So even though there's these bad things that can potentially happen, you're still going to do everything you can to help take care of her.
Yeah,
and
I guess my point would be that surely as a father, my role is to try and educate her the best as she can to make sure she doesn't make these ill-informed decisions.
But you did that.
And there are perverts who...
And unless you locked her in the basement, you can't force her to not do it, right?
And there are perverts who lock their daughters in the basement.
Right, if you locked her in the basement, who is now the evil actor? You or her?
Well, she is. Sorry, you.
No. You. You're.
Sorry,
you're the father. You. After your daughter did it the first time, you back in 18, you said, you know what? I can see that you'll probably go and do all this bad stuff, so I'm going to lock you in the basement. You're no longer allowed to leave the house.
If I could see that she was going to do all that,
who is now the evil actor?
If I could see that, I mean, this is where we get into kind of weird hypotheticals because I'm not God and I don't have the power to, if I was all powerful, surely I would be able to come up with a better way to make sure that she didn't get into all that bad stuff. And if she absolutely got into all that bad stuff, then I would ask, is it worth making her in the first place? To go through all that horrible stuff. Maybe I could just
you now have the ability to realize that even if she dies of doing those drugs, she's actually immortal and her soul will continue.
Yeah, and face eternal damnation.
No. Hang on. Don't talk about eternal damnation. We're talking about existence. Okay, we'll get to the point you're making. Now let's talk about existence. So, as a parent, you know that even if she overdoses on drugs or ends up in a bad case where she gets murdered or whatever, you know that her existence only in this mortal form will end, but her actual existence will continue. So now, is it she will not be terminated, right?
Right.
Is it now justified or unjustified for you to lock her in the basement? Or to have removed the premise of free will from the equation. Now that you know that even if she does something that is negative, it won't actually be the eternal end of her.
Well, I'm not God, so I don't have the powers to.
We're talking about hypotheticals. Where you don't understand why God allows things to happen, and so we're now talking about it from God's perspective. You are now God.
God could do something better than I could do.
You are now God, and you know that as a parent, she's your child, and you know that your child, even if she goes out and does stupid shit, her existence is not going to end.
Well, what if this is where it gets silly because, if I'm a God, maybe I make her bus 2 minutes late, and then she misses her dealer.
And this actually happened.
So is that free will?
Why didn't God do anything about Joseph Fritzl?
Okay, so
and what he did to his daughter, he just stood there with folded arms and did nothing.
How do you learn a
Nothing.
lesson without making a bad decision? That's the question.
Yeah. In the first place, if God spoke, are you sure that you would listen to what He says?
Well, I know that taking drugs is bad. I don't have to take heroin to know that I don't want to take heroin.
Well, actually, that's an interesting question.
Have you taken heroin?
No, I haven't. But
do you know it's bad?
Is alcohol bad?
Yeah, exactly.
Have you ever had a beer?
Right. Let's take a drug I have done.
Depends what you mean by bad.
Like alcohol, right?
Alcohol abuse.
Alcohol is literally a poison. Alcohol literally kills brain cells. Alcohol literally damages your liver. Alcohol lowers your cognitive function. The effect continues for multiple days, even though you're quote unquote sober. And there's massive amounts of extenuated negatives to alcohol. So if you ever had alcohol, you've technically poisoned yourself. So I don't let's not try and get nitpicky on this stuff. If you know this is to be true, and based on what I just told you, it's not going to kill you the first time, but it will poison you, and it has the potential for you to go into addiction and alcoholism and all the negatives that correspond with that. So are you ever going to drink alcohol ever again?
I don't personally drink, but
have you ever?
That's such a stupid thing to say, dude.
Yeah,
I
you're
personally drink. Can you steel man the argument, dude?
Yeah, sorry, I'm not trying to be an arse. I'm just.
You're obviously trying to be pedantic to avoid the obvious.
If you ask me if I've done heroin, and then you turn around and say that,
Sunflower, he's trying to. Sunflower, you may have missed it. He doesn't believe in free will, so this is a completely pointless.
He said third world people are less happy when they're actually they're more happy.
Yeah, Alex actually said that. That's a good point. Thank you, Jungle, for bringing that back up.
I didn't say third world people are less happy. I said
they're actually more happy.
There might be some people in the third world that are worse off.
There's guys on Wall Street that jump off buildings. There's guys
they're actually more happy.
Alex, there's guys on Wall Street that kill themselves.
Yeah. There's people in China that throw themselves off buildings. They build nets for it. It's terrible.
Affluence and happenstance to God's wrath, which is insane. I mean, a person that has progeria could literally live an elated life just through their own.
Because all I'm saying is God could do things to prevent, you were saying, you wouldn't get your child to have a tattoo on their face, and it's because you know better. Well, God could maybe do something along those lines to go, well, actually, I know that heroin's bad, so avoid it.
Well, wait, hold on a sec. What do you mean? That you're conflating things here from the perspective. You're conflating the perspective of the child that wants a tattoo with the ability of the parent to restrict them. The whole point of
but if the parent knew that getting a face tattoo ultimately doesn't matter because they're going to go to heaven, then what does it matter?
No, wait, what? But
wasn't that Maddox's thing?
No.
Scraping your knee's not that bad because this, you're going to learn something from it, and ultimately you'll be all right.
Okay, so, that was in the context of why does God allow things to happen at all, which is the fundamental component of what you've been talking about.
Yeah, we're morally.
Why does God not change it? And He's God, therefore He can come up with some way that we don't ever end up in the position where we even consider taking heroin.
But me and John believe in free will.
Well, maybe it gives you the opportunity. Maybe he gives you the opportunity to take it, but gives you enough information to know not to.
Well, Alex, what if
we have the information to not do heroin? Right? Does pretty much everybody on this planet know that taking heroin has massive negative outcomes?
Yeah, but some people take it because their lives are terrible.
Okay, but that doesn't mean they don't have the information.
Also the environment.
Wait, Alex.
No, but when I say information, I don't mean you've sat down and explained
knowledge. Okay, you really in the modern era. You think that a bunch of people don't actually know, even in the third world, even uneducated people in the third world don't know that heroin has massive negative side effects?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying
it's literally what you're saying.
No, I'm saying that you wouldn't be equipped with enough stuff to for whatever reasons you've come up with, you don't do it. So
a lot of it,
they not give them the same thought process or the same experience.
Alex, you're missing the point. Alex, do you think, and this is honestly, just answer the question honestly. Do you think there's a difference in the good that you feel upon doing something deliberately and it having worked out versus random chance and fortune? So, for example, Like let's say you you were confronted with a difficult decision regarding, like, I don't know, your home and your wealth and your family, and everyone was telling you, Alex, don't do this. This is stupid. And you were like, no, I'm sorry. I crunched the numbers. I thought about it. This is the right decision. And like, let's say that works out. Okay. The well-being resulting from that, do you think that's a different kind of well-being from someone like knocking on your door and saying like, hey, Alex, I know you've never met me, but you're an awesome guy. Here's $500. Like, is there a different kind of well-being from feeling as though you had the ability to choose between two things, and it was a difficult decision, and you did the right thing, even though there was a lot of reasons to not do the right thing, and just like falling into a fortune by pure chance? Or do you think that's like the exact same feeling, just like in a different magnitude?
Yeah, I don't like those, like, the what, I don't know what they call them in America. The one-arm bandits. The fruit machines. You press the button and you randomly win or lose. I don't find those things particularly fun, and I don't find it rewarding when it goes boop boop boop. You've won 20 quid.
Right. So if the maximum amount of well-being comes from an agent feeling as though they could choose between multiple options, and some of those options being maybe immediately apparently more rewarding, and some of the options being maybe involving the person putting more at stake in terms of their ego and reputation, but nonetheless being something they're compelled to believe is the best of all outcomes. If the best possible amount of the highest possible amount of well-being comes from the latter in that case, which would be a person risking in terms of possible damnation, condemnation from everyone they know and love, despite fully believing what they're doing is the right decision. If the highest possible amount of well-being comes from that, then you would need an agent that at least perceives that it has free will. You couldn't just trick, like, I mean, maybe you have a sort of model where this could happen, but I would like to hear it, where a god could kind of invoke that sense of someone having done something without them ever having perceived any sort of individual will. I mean, that to me sounds paradoxical, but I would be interested in hearing a scenario where that would exist.
Sorry, I found that hard to track. Are you saying?
Okay, I'll sum it up. So the well-being that comes from feeling as though one deliberately made a decision that was good, versus the well-being that comes from like some pure luck, like maybe like you walk outside and you see $100 bill on the ground. You don't feel like you're responsible for that. You still feel good, you still feel happy, but you don't feel like you took a risk and it ended up working out. So what I'm saying is, if there's a higher level of being associated with the perception of will and choice and making the right choice, you would need an agent that perceives that choice to begin with. You can't trick them. I don't see a way in which you could trick a person into feeling as though they made a good choice, although they were conflicted.
I think we're tricked into thinking we have choices all the time. Like, none of our choices are actual choices. They're all dependent on external factors.
Well, okay, sure, but what the objection was that your objection was, why couldn't God cleverly make it so that people don't have to go through the quote unquote suffering? What I'm saying is that even if you don't believe in free will, I'm saying the perception of free will is necessary for the
So if I'm God, I could just make them feel like they did the right choice,
and then maybe that's what we're feeling. Fine. Then then you don't have an objection then.
An objection to what?
To, like, if you're saying that God just made people feel like they had a choice, then that could just be what people are already experiencing, and then you wouldn't even be objecting to God. You would just be objecting to the legitimacy of our memory, or like the fact that we actually had a choice versus felt that we had a choice.
I see. Yeah. I mean,
so nonetheless,
I don't really think that I'm not convinced that there isn't a God.
But what I'm specifically objecting to is the notion that God could cleverly, like, craft a scenario in which a person never had to endure the suffering or the sort of like fear and sense of conflict involved in making a difficult decision. That's what I'm saying. You can't get around that, because the well-being that follows from that it requires that initial feeling of tense confliction in order for that latter well-being to be anything other than I found $100 bill on the ground.
I think this misses the point that I was trying to make. Have you ever heard of Baby P? I think it was Baby P.
I don't think so.
So Baby P was like a guy, a little toddler, that was force-fed salt when it like soiled itself and things like that, and died. And I'm kind of thinking, well, what suffering did they go through, and what did they learn from that? Like Baby P didn't have the mental capacity to make a right choice or do the right thing. They were just force-fed salt and died.
Yeah, that's
not good.
Never came online if they died as an infant. Do you believe in consciousness? I mean, do you believe that upon like?
But why? This is the problem that they were talking about, I guess, or at least I was thinking about it. Was you were saying, oh well, I went through something bad and I learned something, and I'm like, well, okay, so that might be why bad things happen to some people. But what's the reasoning behind force feeding a child salt till they die? Like, where God saw that and went, yep, that's okay.
Well, you don't know what the child experienced at all. What do you mean? Like, it's a very sort of narrow way of viewing the child's experience.
So you're saying there was some good that child had from being?
I have no idea, but it doesn't. I'm not saying there was some good. I'm saying that I wouldn't invoke that to invalidate God altogether. That just seems like
no. I'm not saying that means there isn't a God. I'm just questioning what.
But we're not God. We're 11-year-olds at a water cooler talking about why can't we get face tattoos.
Okay.
So like we don't like I don't know. Maybe like I can recall a time.
So Alex, are you suggesting that because this happened, therefore God was condoning and was denoting that action to be good?
No, I'm just saying that.
And what's the point?
If this God is all good, why did that happen? Because I can't see the good. Now, maybe that's just an argument from ignorance on my point. Maybe just because I can't see the good doesn't mean there isn't good.
So you have to define good.
So did that?
Yeah, sure.
So from your perspective, when that baby died from being force-fed salt, did it cease to exist?
Yeah.
Okay, so if it didn't cease to exist, and now it lives in a perfect realm of existence,
why not just put it in a perfect realm of existence? Why create it to be force-fed salt?
Okay, so are we having a conversation about this?
Sorry, yeah.
No, I'm saying, like, are we having a conversation about whether what happened was good or evil?
Well, I don't. That starts going down a different rabbit hole, doesn't it? I mean, what is good?
Well, you don't believe in free will, so is it just a butterfly effect? Would we be having this conversation about whether or not free will is correct if the example of Baby P had never occurred?
From my point of view, things don't just happen, don't they?
Right. You believe in a purely deterministic existence, right?
I mean, I don't know whether it's purely deterministic, but
well, if you have no free, the only way that free will cannot exist is if everything is deterministic.
Yeah, I'm just covering my own ass there and saying, like, I don't know how it wouldn't be deterministic, but I'm not saying it is, because maybe someone comes along and goes, actually, you haven't thought about this. This is why I come onto these things and talk to people, because maybe
you have responsibility.
That's a really good point.
Do you have responsibility?
Do I have responsibilities?
Yeah, are you responsible for what you do?
Well, yeah.
Okay, then you have a choice in the matter.
No, I can't choose not to do them.
If you're being held responsible, if you're responsible for what you do, it means you have a choice that you don't have to do it.
When you say responsible, do you mean? I mean, I'm the entity that does that thing.
Right. So you have a choice.
Think about. I mean, this is an old example, but think about. Have you ever heard Sam Harris's argument where it's like, think of a color, and then it's like, well, you chose blue, for example, but you could have chose green. But if that thought never entered in your head, could you have chose green? Like, what if you go? No, I'm not.
What if two colors entered my mind? What if two colors entered my mind?
Yeah, but whatever decision you made, you'd have had to have thought about that before you thought about it to think, I'm going to choose the other one.
That's one of the options.
Yeah, but whatever
you do have an option. You have an option.
But I'm not. But the entity me makes the choice. But there is no conscious driving thing that maybe it's just a little too warm in here and I choose left or blue.
Well, wait a second. What? I don't understand. Like, do you not make conscious decisions about what you feel is right or wrong?
I think I do, but I'm not in charge of those thoughts.
But here's the problem with that.
The thoughts that come into my head, I have no
Okay,
control
Alex,
over what
here's a
comes
very
in.
simple question. Have you ever done something and then immediately after saying, I feel bad about that, I feel guilty, I made a bad decision? Or
Yeah, but I didn't have a choice in that.
Well, whoa, that's paradoxical, bro. Because if you were actually compelled by what you just said, you would never feel guilt, even in the milliseconds
Yes,
after.
I would, because I can't not feel guilt. If I feel guilt, it's because I feel guilt.
Alex,
you
I'm sorry.
didn't have a choice.
Okay, maybe I have a unique perspective here, but I think that, look, if you're on the subway and the subway stops all of a sudden and your body gets thrown into a pregnant woman and it wasn't your fault, that you're not going to feel nearly as guilty as if you just, I mean, I'm not saying you would ever do this, but if one looked at the pregnant woman and got angry and felt rage and then punched the woman in the head and then was like, oh, I did that fully on my own volition. That's a different kind of guilt than the subway abruptly stopping and their body being thrown through no choice of their own.
Whatever conditions caused that to happen, I didn't control.
Why do you feel one type of guilt when your body gets thrown into the woman and one type of guilt when you just let anger take a hold of you?
Because that's how brains work.
Well, that's, I would give that a little more thought than just that's how brains work.
So you're obligated. You're like David. What's his name? That you're obligated to do whatever the devils tell you to do.
I guess, yeah.
David Berkowitz.
Okay,
yeah.
so Alex, do you believe in evolution?
I don't know enough about evolution to I would say yes, but it might be a yes out of ignorance.
Okay, so do you think that we were created by a intelligent agent, or that we came into existence through undirected process?
I don't know.
Okay. So basically, you don't know anything except that you don't have control over your actions.
Well, that's what I believe. Yeah.
Okay. So, if we evolved, why would it be remotely rational to conclude that we somehow evolved a conscience if we have no choice over our actions?
Because maybe it's better to have a conscience.
So you don't think that conscience is an abstract?
What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, you have to have morals to have a conscience.
Yeah.
Okay. So if there is nothing but pure determinism, that we have no influence on our actions, then one, why would morals possibly evolve? And two, why would conscience evolve after the morals? If there's literally nothing we can do to control it.
Well, maybe there's something advantageous about that. So, like, if I don't steal other people's stuff and kill people, we tend to prosper together.
But you don't have a choice as to whether or not you do or don't. So, the way you feel after you've done.
But if we didn't, the
thing that you can't control whether you steal or don't steal. So how you feel about it after you do the action,
but how I feel
it has zero bearing on whether or not you do it next time.
But you're assuming that I can control how I feel.
No,
But
he's
they-
assuming that that feelings have any purpose.
Like if I steal something and feel bad about it, like that's not. I don't have control. I didn't choose to feel bad over it. I
Wait,
just
Alex,
did.
subjective phenomenology is strange, right? Like, why do you individually feel bad? Why is that not some kind of like, universal feeling of badness for the whole world? Like, so the subjective experience and the fact that you phenomenologically feel guilty as a subjective being and no one else does, that's the crazy thing, right? What is that?
Why would someone else feel guilty?
Because no one should feel guilty. That's the thing.
But maybe there's like a good evolutionary reason why guilt is good.
But there isn't. That's in my opinion. It's actually one of the.
Well, I'm less likely to do things if I think I will feel guilty afterwards.
So hang on. If
happens,
free will is true, then from an evolutionary perspective, you can come up with a rational reason why the conscience would exist. If free will does not exist, then there is no rational reason for it to evolve.
Right. I agree with that.
Because everything about evolution is dependent on there being a reason from a natural selection advantageous perspective.
Yeah, people kill them. Humans are the only ones that kill themselves. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, great point. I mean, like, it's this whole. I mean, guilt is one of the primary primary assault points on the entire premise of no free will. Like,
if a computer game, if there's an NPC and a computer and it says, "Oh, I just killed someone and I feel bad for it," like.
Do you think that would be they would be experiencing guilt, or would it just be you're reading?
Well, if the game's sophisticated enough, yeah.
No.
Okay, and would something have to?
Life.
And would something? Okay, no. Let's go down that rabbit hole. So let's say that it is programmed to be able to experience the emotion. How did the programming come into existence?
Someone programmed it.
Okay, so if it is if let's say we are programmed to feel guilt.
I wouldn't say we were necessarily programmed to do it.
Well, in the game, we would have to be programmed to do it, right?
Well, not necessarily, because like AI is advancing all the time, and one of the best ways to advance AI was to get them to think about themselves. Have you ever heard of the Tetris game?
I'm very familiar with AI. So they
designed
the machine learning
doesn't have a conscience.
So the machine learning,
not yet.
The machine learning that's implemented into those processes,
it's horrible.
Can that pre-program itself?
You got that Robin Williams movie in your head. Machines will never be like that.
Well, maybe not. I don't know.
Well,
no, they won't be.
Hang on, Jason. Let's go down this rabbit hole. So
no.
The expansion point of their at least arbitrary their supposed responses, right? That they're being able to potentially recognize a feeling, right? In terms of the AI, the capacity to do that and the machine learning that was required to get to that point. Is it remotely plausible that could come into existence without an intelligent agent prior to?
Well, computers are built by definition.
Does the programming logic and all the things that are required for the processing of the information in order to begin to execute machine learning algorithms, do you think it is remotely plausible that any of that could come into existence, even conceptually, without an intelligent agent?
A computer or something like a computer? I'm
being rather direct in my question. So, what you're referring to, could it come into existence without an intelligent agent programming the original version?
I think there could be a system that starts to become self-aware as it does more stuff over a long period of time.
Could
the originate? How did it originate?
I'm not talking about what could potentially be extrapolated from the AI system once it's in place, and it's gaining information and processing it and executing machine learning algorithms. I'm talking about the formation of the original machine learning algorithms.
Yeah, you're asking me how did the
computer... Could those ever come into existence without intelligent agents?
Yeah, I think so.
How?
I don't know.
So you think it's plausible that a computer could create itself, B,
I think it's possible.
a language could create itself.
I don't see
C,
any
the
reason to
date
think it's true right now, but that doesn't mean it's false.
true right now. Okay, so you think that it's plausible that somehow, with an infinite amount of time and an infinite number of universes, that somehow JavaScript could create itself.
If you've got an infinite amount of time and an infinite amount of space and an infinite amount
with no intelligent agents at all, you think that JavaScript could create itself?
Well, is there a probability that it could?
No.
Well, how do you know that?
I know. We're talking about from a plausibility perspective. Do you think?
That's what I'm saying.
No, Alex, stop being a child. Do you think? Yes or no? Do you think it is remotely plausible?
You've just asked me this.
That JavaScript can create itself.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe.
Do you even know what happens in information theory?
I'm guessing not by your statement.
Okay. Do you know what a code is?
Everything simplifies.
I've heard of a code, yeah.
Okay.
AI
so
takes shortcuts.
What do you have to have in a code?
Text.
I mean, okay. Well, you know what binary code is? Or sorry, let's say, do you know what
I know binary. Yeah.
You know what Morse code is?
Yeah, I've heard of it. Yeah.
Okay, so the dots and dashes, right?
Yeah, represent letters.
Right. Okay, so without an intelligent agent, can the values that those dots and dashes represent, can those values ever be assigned to the dots and dashes without an intelligence assigning those values?
No, but could the dots and dashes be there? Yeah.
But would they have meaning in relation to what they are?
Well, there's nothing in existence to have the meaning.
Okay, dude,
that's what you're saying. You're saying if a tree falls,
he just doesn't understand.
We're talking about information transfer. Okay,
instruction.
So
instruction. You have to have instruction.
In order for ... whatever to equal a ... dash to equal b, whatever it is, right? An intelligent agent must exist prior to the value assignment of a equaling ... dash, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. That same logic applies the same reality applies in binary being equal to a letter, correct?
Well, yeah, things are what we assign them.
Okay. But the point being made is a intelligent agent must be in play to assign those data values.
Well, you've got to be a pattern recognizing person to recognize patterns. Yes.
Okay, they're not just patterns; they're value assignments. There's a difference between just patterns.
Yeah, but they're only value assignments because someone came along and assigned a value to them.
Right, they had to have
trees because we call them trees.
No. We're talking about information transfer right now.
Has to be recognized.
So now going back to JavaScript, okay.
But JavaScript's a language, the same way as tree.
JavaScript, it requires binary code.
Yeah.
And a translation mechanism, and it requires a encode, translate, decode, and two code tables on either side. That capital A equals 010001, and B equals, and you extrapolate it out, right? You have to have those data value assignments, and you have to have a translation mechanism which can represent or can translate what each one is equal to. Correct?
In order for someone to translate a code, there needs to be someone to translate the code. Yes.
You don't know. Somebody doesn't have to exist.
Somebody has to
only not to translate it. Only
here's the question.
Only a mechanism that recognizes it has to exist.
Here's the question I'm hearing: if there's someone there to see a pattern, does a pattern exist? That's all I'm hearing.
It's not a pattern.
Okay, so.
Well, maybe that's why God created us, because there's no one there to witness it or no one there to love him and love us. And it's you brought up about androids. This is one point I love. If God created us all just to be perfect and do perfect all the time and just tell him how wonderful he was. If you went home every single day to an android and the android told you, "Oh, I love you, darling, you're so beautiful, everything you do is so wonderful," for every day of your life, it would be so boring, wouldn't it? It really would get boring after a while. You'd just be like, this thing only loves me because it's been told to love me. Whereas when God gave us free will and our own minds and our own intelligences and allows us to, to find him in our own way and to come to him and then to love him, it's true love. So he feels fulfilled with that. He needs to love and he needs to be loved. but people who reject him, he created hell for them. So, I mean, he created not for them, for Satan and his demons, but you go to live with Satan and his demons. You decided to be separated from God, and to be separate, there's only two choices: paradise or hell. There's no in between. There's no spirits walking the earth. All those ghosts that you see are demons masquerading as people. The dead can't contact the living ever. And so it's basically like this. Blood was given. I just want to quickly throw this in too. Blood was given to us for atonement. Blood is in the Bible from the beginning of the Bible to the very end of the Bible, blood atonement. And the reason why Satan and his demons can never be forgiven, because this is a lot of questions that people like you sometimes ask, and is because they don't have blood, and they never did. So they can never receive atonement, and they know they can't. So that's why they're so pure evil, because they know they're going down one day, and they want to take as many with them as they possibly can. And it's like if God just made a world full of really boring, flaccid little robots that just walk around doing good to everything and everybody constantly, and just telling him how great he is, and he knows that it's just little boring robots, he's just going to go ho-ho and just go snap his fingers, and the whole world's just turned into dust. You know what I mean? I don't want this. I want, that's why it says your soul is eternal. Your soul, once he makes you, that's it. Your soul's there forever. You can't just say to God one day, I won't want to exist anymore. Anyway, I'm getting off the subject, but you know what I mean, right? We were created. We were just simply, this is just it. God wanted people to love and to love him, because he's pure love. And people that have been to heaven, they say that one guy, he got hit by a head on in a truck. 6 inches of his tibia got thrown out the window and went over the edge of the thing, head on with this massive truck, just crushed his car. Like part of his 6 inches of his leg bone went shooting out the window and over the edge of the thing. He bled out, completely bled out, and died on the side of the road when they got him out. And he was covered under a sheet. And anyway, he was in heaven. He said, long story short, he came back from heaven after being there for 45 minutes. And every single day, he said, since he died for that time, that 45 minutes that he was dead, he said he just wants to get back to heaven, even though he's got a beautiful house, perfect cars, perfect missus, perfect family. He wants to get back. He said even though he got to see his daughter get married, he got to give his daughter away, he got to see her at a graduation, he got all this happiness in his life. He said he's depressed every day because all he wants to do is get back to that feeling of love. And one guy in Vietnam, he died. And he said that the love that he experienced after he'd been shot with like 40 bullets, and the love that he experienced while he was dead and with God, he said that all the drugs and all the pleasure and everything that he's ever had, and he had a lot of drugs because he was in Vietnam and they were giving him morphine and stuff for his pain. He said all the drugs and all the pleasure and everything that he's experienced all put together wouldn't even come close to being 1 second with God. So that's what you feel in heaven and for eternity. You don't feel hunger, you don't feel the need, urges for sex, you don't feel this, you just feel pure love and pure just fulfillment for forever, and you worship and sing and praise God, and God loves you back, and he's going to be your light forever and ever and ever. He is your light. You don't need the sun anymore once it's all said and done. So this is what the whole world was created for. God knew at the beginning of the creation, he knew Adam would fall, and when God asks a question, like he asks say, Satan, where did you come from in Job? And he asks Cain, where's your brother? God doesn't ask a question seeking knowledge. He asks a question to see if you're a lying sack of shit or not, basically. So
can I ask Jason a question?
What's up, Bruce?
So, Jason,
I can't stand you, mate. I fucking hate you, man.
Hold on. Let me ask Jason a question. Hold on. Oh, so I was going to say, since he says God is love, what are you?
Why does God take people? Why does God bring them back? I mean, what is that, a troll question?
Yeah, he doesn't reflect God at all, that Jason Easer, but okay. So he just uses... So he uses God for... What'd you say?
That was Alex. Alex's question is, why did God bring them back? Why did God take them? Why did God bring them back? Is it always a question of why did God do this, that?
Yo, what's up, LPP, little bitch? That's what. What's his name called you that?
Ask yourself, yeah.
Yeah, I was like, wow, he's gonna say this in the middle of the debate to his interlocutor. I thought James didn't permit that, but oh well.
Well, James wasn't there. But
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't really surprise me. He's an immature little boy anyway. It's all good. I really want to know. I really want to know how old that guy is, because he really strikes me as a super arrogant man.
He's a university student, so I assume he's about like 23, 24, something like that.
Yeah. He's a little man child, but yeah, it's weird. Now, Praise, you can come on the show, but let's not start a bunch of personal drama.
No, I know, but he says God's love. I wonder if he reflects that. That's all. Because whatever. But see, with the fine tuning, did you go into the symbiotic relationships with? I think you could have. I think I probably would have argued.
No, those little jokers refused to actually go into substantive debate. I mean, it was all they wanted to do was like go into prop logic statements, not actual discussion of like what is the evidence to support the fundamental argument. Like, oh no, no, we're not doing anything unless it's in a prop logic statement. It's like, no, that's not how debate actually works. Like, I don't have to come up with a new argument every time I want to issue a component of. And I would say when I say argument, I don't have to like issue a formal. Okay, well here's the if then, for every single deal when we're discussing a macro concept. Like that's stupid. I mean, it's not how actual conversation and discussion occurs.
Yeah.
That's what you're gonna get though if you speak to him.
Well, I know, and that's why I said it in my opening statement. Like, this is where this is where it's gonna go, and I'm just gonna go ahead and predict it. And here's why it's dumb, and here's why they're cowards. I mean, if you're not gonna actually go down and actually allow real discussion, not hyper focus on hypothetical outliers. I mean, I got no time for you. I mean, there's literally no point in actually having conversation. There's nothing you can end up with other than a bunch of rabbit hole dumpster diving. It's obnoxious. But anyway, so is your stream still going on, Praise?
Yeah, I'm in 2 streams right now at one time, but yeah, I thought you did a good job, man, considering the circumstances.
Oh, I honestly didn't do much. I mean, the second half of it, I basically just shut up and let. Irony. So, ask yourself didn't say anything either, which I thought was interesting. The whole second half of the debate was Andrew and Troy talking, and I was like, whatever, yeah, let's let them have a conversation, because every time I talk, ask yourself turns into a jackass and starts making little snipey comments. So it's going to just degenerate into stupidity, and I'm not going to play the game. So I'll just shut up and let them talk.
Do you think you could have a good conversation with Troyer?
I mean, possibly. He was more reasonable than Ask Yourself. It's he at least said he wanted to expand the conversation and offer to, and then it just kept turning back into dumpster fire. So I tell you one thing: I will never interact with Ask Yourself again. I thought the T-Jump was ridiculously obnoxious.
Did you see the one with Ask Yourself and T-Jump?
I did. Yeah, that was 2 of the most annoying people on the planet going at each other. Well, I remember watching that, and I actually commented multiple times throughout the debate of like, I did not think anybody could be more obnoxious than T-Jump, and it's this guy. Like, he out T-Jumped T-Jump.
I watch a lot of T-Jump, but I find him really annoying when he just goes, well, the consensus says this. Because it's like, well, okay, but is there any evidence that the consensus says that? Or, are you just saying the consensus says this? And then that's all he says. He just shuts up. He doesn't put any argument up. He just says, well, the consensus says you're wrong. And if you want to argue with them, go argue with them. And it's like, well, I would do, but I'm here talking to you. So,
well, one of my biggest frustrations with all this stuff is, on one side, if you start presenting, like if you make a formal argument and then don't back it up with substance, then to support your claim, then you're told you didn't actually bring any evidence. If you make an initial argument and then begin to bring the substance, then they claim you're not making an argument. And it's like, well, which one do you want? Like, you do one, oh, it's not enough. You do the other one, oh, it's not enough. And then you attempt to do both, and then it's, well, we need to focus on one. And it's like, so are we ever actually going to get to anything of substance, or are you going to constantly look for ways to escape the obvious that completely shatters your worldview and forces you to have real, comprehensive, rational considerations about your very existence, and not the ability to just escape into denialism and there is no evidence. I'm not just talking to you. I'm talking about in general of a lot of this community.
Yeah, I know. I was just going to say I'd be happy with Tom if he said, "Look, consensus says you're wrong, and here's the paper or the evidence that says they've done all this hard work." Because at the very least, then you can go, "Well, I haven't read that yet, so I'll read it and come back to you." But if he's just going to say you're wrong because I've read something that says you're wrong, then how is that any different from you're wrong because it says in the Bible you're wrong?
No.
Yeah, I don't get that line of argumentation. Like if you're going to be an online debater, I'm not an online debater, so I'm not going to be able to come and pull every reference or thought, from my head. But if I was going to go on to something like modern day debate and say something like, well, the majority of philosophers believe X, I should at least be able to have that on demand to say that's where I'm getting that from.
Well, here's the irony, though. The atheists and the agnostics specifically, and very, very specifically in the context of like any kind of evolution debate, for example, they insist on citations. If you provide citations to support your argument, then they either claim that they'll have to look into it and get back to you, or they argue that even though they haven't read it, it's actually not what it says. Or, oh, well, the majority don't agree with that paper. And then, very ironically, they claim that they're going to go and look into it. And then the next time you have an interaction with the same individuals, they haven't actually looked into it. But still,
you're talking about
adamantly claim that whatever your position is wrong, even though they never actually went and looked into it for themselves.
Yeah, you're talking about what's her name? I can't remember her name now.
Well,
you've done a couple of debates.
You're probably referring to Erica, or no? You're referring to Amy, probably.
Yes, Amy.
Yeah, Amy.
I remember you having a debate with her, and you'd said like, "Oh, I gave you this thing to look at," and she was like, "Oh no, I didn't even look at it."
I think in the follow-up debates, insisted that the position I took, even though she admitted not looking into it, was false. I was still wrong, even though never actually went and researched it.
Well, that just baffles me because, if you are an agnostic, then surely you're open to the possibility, I want to know. So if you've got a paper that's going to convince me that I'm wrong, please show it me and then I'll read it. Like if I genuinely care enough to go on and debate people.
Well, and this is where things like dual use syntax become extraordinarily important. This is why I was being like, I honestly think you should go and look into, go on YouTube and Google information theory, code mapping, value assignment, communication theory, and go and learn how it works. And then
it's difficult. I have 4 kids and a full-time job.
Well, you can watch 20-minute videos.
No, I definitely.
I'm not saying you don't have to go and take a full course to understand the fundamentals.
Yeah.
And then if you do the exact same thing and go look at, and just by the way, there's literally who knows how many papers written on the fact that information and communication theory applied directly to genetics. So if you go and learn the fundamentals of information theory and how all this stuff works, and then realize that holy shit, all of this exact same logic applies to my very existence.
Oh.
There's no other than saying, I guess there's some way that this could magically happen.
In order to be human.
The only rational conclusion is that there's only 2 options. And this is recognized by atheist origin of life researchers, for example. Yeah. They recognize that either A, there has to be an external cause, or B, somehow the thing that is they freely admit is the most improbable thing ever, somehow happened.
Yeah.
Like that's where we're at now in terms
Infinite
of
impossibilities.
explaining our existence. Like this is not a God of the gaps, even though the ignorant YouTube atheists love to run around claiming everything's God of the gaps. The like the people that are making that argument are just ignorant, because the PhD researchers, they recognize that it's not just a like God of the gaps argument. It's a, oh crap, like either we got to find a way to explain this, or our entire position is like our total naturalism and materialistic worldviews are completely annihilated if we can't figure out a way to explain this.
Right.
I mean, this is recognized. Like, where the hell do you think that the multi-worlds theory came from? It's to try and explain the fact that all this crap shouldn't be possible without an intelligent agent. Like, that's the root of all this. Like, if this is not true, then our very existence shouldn't happen.
This might be like
unless there's a multiverse.
This might be a weird tangent, but do you think that there are other planets that could have life?
You have programmable matter that's programmed inside of you. That's a big problem. And probably there's no life on other planets.
Just because there's another planet that could hypothetically support life has zero bearing on whether or not life could exist itself.
Well, I was thinking maybe that could be, I mean, it would be really, really good if like we met another alien species and they said, oh, there was this geezer called Christ and we heard about how he went to Jerusalem, and that, I mean, that would be pretty convincing. And then maybe there would be a planet that is just evolving into something, like we could see creation happening somewhere.
That would convince you?
Oh, I didn't say that. I don't know what would convince me, but I'd be convinced when I'm convinced. But I think it'd be pretty interesting, you know, if an alien came down. I mean, maybe.
So question. Do you follow Matt Dillahunty?
I've watched some of him, yeah.
Okay. So what could convince you?
I honestly don't know, because I've seriously thought about this, and I've tried to think about all these, you know, like kind of, oh, maybe the stars would change into, but I don't think that would convince me, you know, like I genuinely tried to think about what would be compelled, you know, even if a person turned up and said, I am Jesus and walked on water and turned water to water, I'd be like, well, I just don't know how that happened. So I don't know what would convince me. All I can think is, well, I'll be convinced when I am.
Yeah, you have to change your heart.
Yeah, but that's difficult.
Why?
Why is it difficult? Because I'm not convinced by the arguments.
So I'll pose the same question I posed to Amy. If you are in the middle of a desert, it's you and another person who's handicapped and has completely withered legs and whatnot, and somebody appears in front of you, claims to be the Son of God, and says, rise up and walk. And in real time, you observe their legs and all the muscles and everything in real time just like grow, the muscles reform, and they start walking. Would that convince you?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. If the same person says, what would you like to see? And you say, I would love to experience Mars. And they say, done. And you're now on Mars and being shown Mars. They say, what do you want to do next? I want to stay on the top of Mount Everest. Okay. And you're on top of Mount Everest. Would you be convinced?
No, I don't think so.
So are you now you say, I want to go back in time and observe the whatever you'd like to see in history.
Yeah, these are all difficult though, because they're kind of like the science fiction.
No, we're talking about real possibilities, right? So if that happened,
yeah, but that's what I mean. Science fiction.
If that happened, would you believe that? And this person say, "I am God."
Like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea is like science fiction in a way, you know. And that didn't that come out
Yeah,
before?
we're not talking about a book. We're talking about an experience that you're engaged in real world. In real time.
Yeah. I get that. But what I'm saying is, like, you know,
no, all you're doing is looking for reasons to not believe.
Well, I'm just saying that.
So are you honestly telling me that if you watched somebody on command take control of physics, chemistry, biology, and could bend it to their will,
I think they'd know a lot about science.
Okay.
Well, that's what it's about.
Maybe
So basically what you're saying is you're just like Matt freaking Dillahunty and all of the other ridiculously closed-minded individuals who are desperate to avoid the premise that they are not, or that they are ultimately subject to a higher power.
No, if there was a God, he could come down and do something, and I'd go, yeah.
We just talked about it, and we just talked about it, and you said no, I wouldn't.
No. I said I don't know what that would be.
You don't know what it is, but
I can't think of it.
So
but
God takes you to Mars in a blink of an eye. He takes you to the top of Mount Everest. He heals somebody in front of you.
Teleporters could do that. Advanced medicine could do that.
We don't know how to teleport.
No, we don't.
So basically, you have no intention of ever believing. Dude, I'm done with you.
I don't know about that.
This whole conversation is pointless, man. People like you annoy the crap out of you. You claim to be looking. You claim to be open-minded. Yet you have your minds are so myopic that
you're just saying, look, I'm going to give you an example.
It's mind-bending. Okay, so but you of your own admission have no idea what would convince you, but you think that you need to be convinced.
Yeah,
and then we're talking about things that.
Well, I do because I'm not.
Well,
so is there anything that can convince you, or are you always going to just say no? There's some other explanation for it.
I can't think of anything that would convince me.
Again, back to my point of you being a very closed-minded individual who needs to go ponder existence.
I don't think I am.
So if your 2-year-old is dying in front of you, and you pray, God, if you're real, come and heal her. And Jesus appears in front of you and says, I'm going to answer your prayer, and heals your daughter. Is that enough to convince you?
Is it closed-minded to think that there couldn't be another possibility for how that happened?
Okay. Again, you're just like ask yourself.
Well, it's too hard.
I'm done with guys. I'm done with this crap. I'm taking a break.
I'm
tired. I'm operating on 2 hours of sleep. I'm calling it a night. This crap is just. I don't understand these people. This stuff is so. It's
when he asked the question, why would God bring him back? To me, that just sealed it. He's not looking. He's just looking to be a troll, basically.
It's just dumb. I can't handle this stuff. Okay. Anyway, guys, I am exhausted. I get some sleep. Jungle, love you, brother. Thanks for coming. And actually, you know what? I may hang around for one more second. P Tango, drop your proverbial balls and come in here and let's talk some trash. I'm sure you're drunk as a skunk. Come on, P Tango. Let's go. You were talking trash in comments earlier. Link is in the description.
P Tango.
Tango P.
Hey, can you say hi to you guys? Logical, plausible, probable, and double jargon. Always nice seeing you guys.
What's up, Iger? How's the flat earth treating you?
I got I got one of my channels deleted. This one here, I can't do live streams. But other than that, great, bro.
He's hurting.
What's up, Tango? How drunk are you?
There we go. See if we got anything coherent, intelligent, logical, reasonable.
I don't know. I just
rational.
Thought.
Oh, that's funny, I guess.
P Tango, are you alive? We're seeing your ceiling.
Are you okay?
Funny how the sky is actually the ceiling in Spanish. El cielo.
Yeah, P Tango's guaranteed. Oh yeah, he's drunk. How much whiskey?
Why would you say that?
Because
it's like about daytime.
Yeah, you've been hammered in daytime on multiple times. Actually, my first interaction with you on Nephilim Freeze channel was about this time, and you were schmammered and got drunker by the second.
Okay.
So how much have you had to drink so far?
No, I haven't.
You're 100% sober?
Yeah.
I call BS. But what? Come on, you were talking trash earlier in comments. What's up?
I just think it was very dishonest the way you were dealing with Iger.
With Iger?
Yeah, on the television.
When he was talking to me, he's told me all this stuff about God is real, which he is, about evolution being a lie, which it is, and also what else? Dinosaurs.
Sorry, who was the he's gone, is he?
Alex.
I've literally like walked through my front door, so I've just seen this on now. But like you were bringing up, like, well, what could convince you? What could convince you? You know, that sort of rhetoric.
Yeah.
What could convince you that it's wrong?
What can convince you that you come from an amoeba?
No. What could convince you that you're wrong?
About which topic? About God's existence?
Yeah, like just like you were putting it to him to say, what could convince you that it's real? What could convince you that it's not real?
That's what we're talking about. What convinces us.
Well, that's great. Excellent.
So it's the information.
You have the floor.
I have answered.
You have the floor.
I have answered this question many times.
That's great. I didn't hear it. I've only just come in the door.
Which is, if you figure out a way.
Really?
Yeah,
so if you can figure out a way to convince me it's right, then I'll agree it's right.
No,
$10 million.
No, you asked me what would convince me that God doesn't. I would come to the conclusion that God does not exist if it could be proven that somebody is getting pretty loud. Come on. What is that crazy loud background noise? If it can be shown that life can create itself, yeah, God is no longer required. If God can create itself, or sorry, if life can create itself. You were on mute. You were on mute, Tango. Hey, what's up, Sal?
I haven't got any controls.
I just wanted to say hi before you all said good night.
How are you doing? Oh, wait, just for everybody that's still in the stream. So tomorrow night, is it 8 o'clock? So
at 10 o'clock.
Oh, 10
and
o'clock.
There'll be a pre-show on my channel, Evidence and Reasons. If you go to evidenceandreasons.org and click on the link in the menu for the YouTube channel, I'm planning to have a simulcast pre-show at about 9:30, but then the rest of the show is on SFT's channel, but it's still simulcast. I'm not simulcast.
Okay, so yeah. So tomorrow night channel. So tomorrow night is part 3 of the protein probabilities lecture series that Sal has been doing, and I think you're going to be getting into some of the nitty gritty, some of the most substantive stuff tomorrow night. Specifically in relation to the lack of common ancestry of the protein families. Is that right?
That's right. And this is taking off. It's taken on a new life because now they're actually speed of sound, immutable. They're all pouncing on me and saying, "You've got to be dumb if you believe in universal common ancestry of proteins."
Well, so it's ironic. It's ironic how when their fundamental arguments get annihilated, they adapt them and then try to come up with hypotheticals of the newly recognized truth. Then they try to come up with some hypothetical way that explains. And it's always been our position that that's the way it is.
So what is so funny is I just put it on the table, and they had a whole show on like, does Sal have a brain that he doesn't understand that there's no universal common ancestry of genes? It's like, well, one, I never said that I ever believed otherwise. I never said that but they started saying that I believed that, and I didn't. But the funny thing was, if I have enemies like that, who needs friends, figuratively speaking? Because now they're arguing against the universal common ancestry of genes. It's like, guys, don't you realize you're getting like one step closer to other things? And I got a clip of Speed of Sound. He kind of indicated he's open to the idea of independent common ancestry of, like, say, eukaryotic organisms. So I'm going to cover that too. And it's like, yeah, okay, so there are problems with abiogenesis, and I did the protein probabilities a little bit with that. That kind of bugged Speed of Sound a little bit. But then now we're going to actually talk about in the genomic, in the age when there's genomes, which is now biological evolution, the problems that will, the things that'll be problematic for biological evolution in addition to abiogenesis. So that's why I believe that there's a designer. That was the beginning of it. And of course, then this makes it interesting then to think about things like Noah's flood and Adam and Eve and the things that would confirm the Christian faith. So I'm hoping that you will be like a Standing for Truth said you might be a co-mod or showing up as part of the show.
I'm definitely planning on being there. It'll depend. I got some work I got to do tomorrow, but I should be back in time for that.
Yeah, 10 p.m.
Either way, one way or the other, I'll be there listening because I'm very intrigued by as you know, I'm very intrigued by this topic and always interested to learn more about it. I tell you, here's the thing, man. Here's what I've been strongly considering is, just to be blunt, the level of dumbassery that comes out of the average YouTube idiot about these topics and the level of ignorance as they continue to double down on their already massively debunked talking points. I mean, it's reaching levels of stupidity that have never been witnessed in the history of mankind. I mean, it's just like, oh, well, there's a car driving down the road. I think that somehow that car evolved from a bicycle. Like, that's where we're at. Like, because because the wagon once existed and the wheel before that, somehow it is the rational outcome that the Ferrari now exists. Like, this is where we're at now. And
yeah, actually, one thing that really moved me, I wish you'd talk about it more. I think a lot of people come to the Christian faith because Jesus touched their lives personally. And I was really moved by your story. I mean, were you there for 10 years when, I mean, did you believe in God before you had your brain hemorrhage?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. No, that's why I tell people about that. I mean, I made the conscious decision to step away from what I knew was right. I mean, wow. I even put a time limit on it. I mean, my freshman year in college, I literally gave myself a decade. And like, I vividly remember having like okay, God, 10 years, I'm going to go do my thing and I'm going to go sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And then in 10 years, I got my life right. And I literally did that for 10 years. And it was almost 10 years to the day that I found myself in ICU being told I should be dead. And I mean, I should not, where the damage was in my brain from the hemorrhage, I should not be able to talk to you right now. And yet I do. Yeah. I mean, there's so many different facets of, and of course, you know, the atheists usually go, well, there's a hypothetical, it's not impossible for your brain to be able to rewire and you to still be able to talk. And it's like, yeah. I understand all that stuff. I've researched heavily into my brain and brain hemorrhage because I had one. Like, I understand all that crap, you idiots. The point is that there's additional variables that make this not coincidental. Of I shouldn't be alive. Doctors all recognize I should have dropped dead, let alone even be able to talk, given where the brain hemorrhage was. And then for it to happen in the literal window of time of the decade of which, or the expiration of the decade of which I had put the limiter on myself a decade prior, and now I'm being held to account. I mean, let's get real. Let's get real. That's not coincidental.
Yeah, the only reason I pointed that out
Seriously.
is you wonder maybe sometimes why I'm nice to other people, than even when they're doing stuff that I think is kind of stupid. It's like, well, I've done my share, so I'm not the first to cast a stone. That's just, and even though I might personally be very critical of what other people think, I don't bash them over the head, because I've done some things when I should have known way better. Goodness. So
Yeah,
I just wanted to say,
could-
I really, that account, I meant to ask you, I said, when I showed up here, I wanted to ask you if you believed in God when you were going through that 10 years. So anyway, that's all I had. I just wanted to say hi, because I was busy getting ready for my talk tomorrow, and lots of things are happening, and I'm going to be trying to build out my YouTube channel and my website. And I was actually listening to Shannon Q tonight.
Oh, yes.
It's just totally by accident. I don't know how YouTube said, "Oh, I think Sal would really like that particular," and she actually has some. She has some views that are actually very similar to mine regarding what's called biblical counseling at church. A lot of it's kind of charlatanry, and I think it's hurt a lot of people in the church. That had nothing to do with anything where you guys were talking tonight. That's totally off topic. So I was just telling you what I was up to.
Oh no, I appreciate it. You're always no. We've danced around on different topics tonight, and now we've got P Tango, who's like over there freaking out and wondering when he's going to have his next shot of whiskey.
And trying to figure out what we're talking about.
Well, anyway, it's nice meeting you, gentlemen, and that's not the same as Alex. It was Alex who was talking to you earlier?
That was Alex. Yeah, he's good. I'd had enough of him.
Oh goodness!
Oh,
Man.
did you kick him? Did you kick him?
Yeah, I put him backstage. Actually, no, I let him back in, then he left.
Okay.
Because he didn't seem like he was really wanting to know what the facts were and what the issues are.
With that whole "what would convince you" argument.
Yeah, if nothing would convince him, then he's doesn't want to know anyway.
And maybe at least the better thing is people are being open about it. Some of them just kind of dodge the issue. I thought Alex was kind of dodging the issue, but some people have been really very forthright and said, even if I thought it were right, they wouldn't serve the Lord. And I'm like, okay, thank you for being so direct.
Yeah, well, absolutely, and that's why I went through. He probably didn't pick up on this, but I actually went through multiple aspects of like different facets of things that are recognized as the powers of God, if you will, and I ended it with answer to prayer, right? And it was, if your 2-year-old daughter is dying and you pray and say, please come and heal her, and Jesus appears and says your daughter is healed and she's healed after you just prayed and asked, and God appeared and heals them, and will you believe? No. Well, okay.
Well, let's put it this
okay.
way.
Well, then at what point is your and this is on top of like, hey, you went to Mars. Hey, you teleported. You know, all those different things, and like that's not enough. And then real time answer to prayer is not enough. Well, okay, I give up.
Yeah.
So to turn it back on you, you're praying for your 2-year-old. Nobody shows up, and she dies.
No, that's not the case in point. The question is, what could God? No. The atheists love to say, if God actually exists, then why doesn't He come down and prove it to me? And then when you pose and you put the hypotheticals in front of them, okay, fine. What does God have to do? If God came down in front of you, what would they have to do to convince you? And then, well, I just don't know yet. So then you start presenting hypotheticals. If you get to teleport wherever you want, not off the planet, you're on freaking Mars now. Then you're on the top of Mount Everest. Then you watch them like create something out of nothing, and then they heal somebody in front of you in real time. And then you keep, well, it's just magic. It's just magic. It's just magic. Okay, fine. Now they're not with you. You're in the hospital with your kid. You pray, and then in real time they appear and say, I am Jesus. I'm going to answer your prayer. Boom, child, be healed. And that's still not enough. after you've teleported to Mars, you've been to the top of Mount Everest in real time. You've watched things get created out of nothing, and they healed somebody else in front of you when you're out in the middle of the desert. It's just the two of you, and it happens, and that's still not enough. Then you have zero intention of ever being convinced.
Well, let me put it this way. Let's give you the caveat that, okay, Jesus appears, and I believe all of a sudden, okay, you're Jesus, blah, blah, blah. I believe now that you're here. Does that mean I have to worship him?
No. But you would still accept that you have to accept that he exists.
Okay, cool.
For what? But what, you want eternal life or what?
So is Jesus and God the same person?
Jesus is God.
Okay, so the Jesus in front of me wrote all the laws in the Old Testament.
Which point?
All of it.
Does that change the fact that whether or not Jesus would be God?
It changes the fact that whether or not he deserves my respect.
Well, that has nothing to do with whether or not he's God.
Big deal. What does that mean?
Big deal. So you think that the recognition of I'm standing in the presence of the entity that has the power to create the universe. You think that your arrogance would and like whatever would actually hold up?
Because I'd have some questions.
Wait, questions is not relevant to the point being made of you think that you would just be able to brush that off.
Yeah, well, you could call him God if you want.
Okay, I mean, who do you think is the most powerful person on the planet right now?
I don't know.
Who is your favorite celebrity?
God.
God's your favorite celebrity? That's ironic.
God is...
Yes. Oh, touche. Yeah, okay. Let's say my favorite celebrity is Michael Myers.
Michael Myers, like the actor Michael Myers?
I don't know. I just picked a name.
Okay. So if Austin Powers appeared in front of you, would you be like, what?
Yeah, I'd be surprised.
Okay. Now, who's the current prime minister of Australia?
It's hard to pick down sometimes, but Morrison.
Okay. So if Morrison if you were in the same room with him, and whether or not you respect everything he's done or not, would you act like a total prick?
No.
Why?
I'd have some questions.
You have some questions, but you wouldn't be an asshole, would you?
No, absolutely not. No.
Okay. Now, if you were in China and President Xi, or whatever how you pronounce his name, you were in his office, do you think you would have the balls to talk any shit whatsoever?
What, in case he killed me?
Yeah.
I'd probably hold my tongue a little bit.
Okay, because he's the most powerful man in China, right? And he's not limited to like all these other restrictions that like the Prime Minister of Australia is, right?
Yeah, that's correct. He has no value to human life whatsoever.
Well, he has no restrictions on what he can do with it.
No, he just doesn't value human life.
Right, he can do pretty much whatever he wants inside.
Yeah, he could just pull out a gun and shoot me, and everybody would turn the other way. Well, they wouldn't turn the other way.
Well, it would just never. It never happened. It would be erased from that action would never have occurred. But but you would never even consider being like, you know what? I think you're a piece of crap because I disagree with X, Y, and Z. And you know what? I piss on you. You'd probably end up being executed, right?
Oh, yeah, big time.
Okay. So you would respect the power, right?
I would be wary of it, yeah.
Okay. And you wouldn't be a dumbass, at least theoretically, unless you were drunk. No. Okay. So you think that if you were standing in the presence of the entity which could create the universe, that suddenly the level of derision and skepticism that you employ towards him in our conversations on a regular basis, you don't think that would vanish?
So are you comparing your God to.
I'm putting it. I know. I'm putting it in context. We're talking about absolute power.
Yeah, because God could just wipe me out. Yeah, he could put a gun to my head and just kill me, and just like everybody would just go.
Now,
that's what we deserve, right?
Yeah, because your basically your whole ideology is immoral.
The whole ideology is immoral.
Because everybody.
So, what defines morality?
Well, what benefits society, the individuals, helps things make it better? Why? How do you define it?
So, is that abstract? Is that objective or subjective?
Well, it can only be subjective.
So there is no objective moral.
Well, what's objective morality?
Like something is wrong because it's wrong, not based on what I think about it.
And subjectively, that's you can make a decision on that.
So that doesn't change whether or not something's wrong or not. So tomorrow, do you have any kids?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have a daughter?
Yes.
Okay. If tomorrow it was determined that on Thursdays, any man who felt like it could rape your daughter, would you say that is subjectively now moral?
No.
Why?
Because subjectively, I'd be against it.
Well, but everybody says it's fine.
So, name me an objective moral.
Everybody says it's fine.
No. Name me an objective moral. I need a place to start with. Name me an objective moral.
He just did.
Do you think it is ever acceptable for a society, to decide that raping girls on Thursdays is ever going to be morally correct?
Well, one, I'd like to meet that society, but like, honestly, is it?
So there's been societies where raping women was totally acceptable.
Yeah, it's actually part of. It's a thing of war. It's a psychological aspect of war. You rape people, and you enforce your power.
So you do realize that it's a fundamental. One of the biggest issues happening in Europe right now with all of the immigrants is that in many of the northern African countries, if a woman is showing skin from their societal perspective, that means she literally wants to get raped. So
subjectively,
they have decided that is subjectively okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
And
is it objective? So is it objective? So is it objectively okay?
There is no objective moral truth.
Okay. So you're saying that it's never wrong for men to just decide that it's okay for them to rape women?
No. Between all of us.
So is it objective or subjective? Those men operate from the perspective that if a woman is showing skin, that means she wants them to come and rape her.
To all of us here,
they have decided this.
So are you going to let me answer the question, or are you just going to talk? Just tell me, because I'll just sit here and just listen to you. I'll just wait this out. Right. So subjectively, all of us here realize that we're raping a woman for punishment or to enforce law or whatever is wrong. But subjectively, other groups think it's okay. Does that make it constitutionally, like, objectively wrong or right? No, because there is no objective right and wrong. There is only we think about things.
So if tomorrow in Australia they struck down the rape laws, is it now no longer immoral to rape your daughter whenever somebody feels like it? Right now it's illegal and it's immoral in Australia to do this, correct?
Why are they doing it?
No. Answer the question. In Australia now, it's immoral, correct?
Because why are they doing it?
Is it ever going to be objectively moral for somebody to be able to rape your daughter?
Do you think objectively in some countries they think it's okay?
No, I think that's subjective. I'm asking you, tomorrow in your country.
No.
In your worldview.
No.
Okay, so is it always wrong for somebody to decide that they can just rape your daughter?
According to our ideology, yeah.
Okay, so if your daughter was in that country and it happened to her, would you still think it was immoral?
Yes.
So it's only immoral it's not immoral in that country, though. They say it's not immoral.
Hence subjectiveness. Are you even listening to me talk?
Yes, but I'm saying from your perspective, even though you are still in, oh my God, you're an idiot if you don't comprehend this.
I comprehend.
I'm done. All right, guys, I'm done for tonight. I can't deal with dumbass atheists anymore tonight. This crap is just imbecilic. It's dumb. I'm done. All right, folks, I gotta go to bed. I gotta get up in the morning and get some stuff done. I appreciate everybody for stopping by. Sorry for being mildly irritated and a little bit snippier than normal. Everybody, make sure you go and check out the protein probabilities lecture that Sal will be doing tomorrow night at 10. He's actually doing a pre-show on his channel. Go check that out. And then live lecture on Standing for Truth. Should be awesome. You don't want to miss that one. And thanks everybody for
after show too.
Oh, and he's doing an after show. Okay, man. All right. So Sal is going to be streaming. Sal's going to be streaming out the Yin Yang tomorrow.
What's the name of his channel? I just subscribed to that.
Evidenceandreasons.org is the website. From there, from the menu, you can click a link to the YouTube channel. And I'm simulcasting from the SFT channel.
What's the name of your channel, your YouTube channel?
Huh?
The name of your YouTube channel?
Evidence and Reasons.
All right. Yeah, I just
go to evidenceandreasons.org. So I'll type it.
I'll put a link to it in the chat.
Yeah. Well, God grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the strength to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And for the atheists in the chat and that we're here in the live stream, this is the sinner's prayer. Dear Lord Jesus, I know that I'm a sinner and I ask for your forgiveness. I believe you died for my sins and rose from the dead. I turn from my sins and invite you to come into my heart and life. I want to trust and follow you as my Lord and Savior. Amen. God bless you. I'll see you next time.
All right.
God bless John. Jungle Jargon, Iger. Take care, gentlemen. This is delightful.
All right. Have a great night, everybody.
I just read the whole Gospel of John. I'm beat.
And before we wrap up, so Tape Deck is saying I'm being mean. Tape Deck, I've literally let you run your mouth in side chat and be a complete idiot the entire night. And now you're claiming that I'm just ending it so horribly. Yeah, I let you be an idiot. So
it was almost a good discussion, but I'm kind of tired too. So
yeah, it's time. Atheists are an extra level of dumbassery tonight. All right. Have a good night, everybody. And keep, as James likes to say, keep sifting the reasonable from the unreasonable. And as I like to say, make sure whatever conclusions you reach are logical, plausible, and probable. Have a good night, y'all.
Yep.